Chapter 1099. Yang Guo's deal with Wang Shirtsong had attracted a lot of attention on the internet, but he didn't have time to respond to the doubts about the rapid depletion of the remote teaching charity fund. It was only Wang Yuba who came forward on his behalf to resolve the storm. Where did Poplar Fruit go? He did not go anywhere. He just went back and forth between school and home. But he was so busy that even Zheng Yujie did not dare to disturb him. Fang Beibei also helped him with most of the housework. This was to give him more time to complete his research on the word disassembly method. In June, the research on the word splitting method was in its final stages. Yang Guo wasn't the only one who wanted to achieve this goal in one go. Even the old men from the Chinese language education research team, other than those who couldn't walk, all came to Yangcheng. Those who had connections as guest professors used their connections to temporarily stay at the school and teach for a few days. Those who did not have connections in Yangcheng, Higashiyama University was happy to get all of these old men in one fell swoop. Well, it shouldn't have been so obvious. Instead, it should be said that Dongshan University sent out 2 vice principals and several leaders and professors in charge of the Chinese department to serve these old men well. Not only did they incite and persuade them, but they also managed to get 4 of these old men, who were national treasures, to become visiting professors at Dongshan University. This number was more than half of the research team. Before this, in the 21st century, Higashiyama University only had 1 professor, Professor Yun, who had retired. Even if they were guest professors, they would only be here for less than a month. But with their connections, it was good. Furthermore, they lured these professors to sign the contract because Poplar Fruit would be studying Chinese at Higashiyama University for the next few years. These professors were willing to be guest professors at Higashiyama University because of Poplar Fruit. This meant that in the future, they would often visit Higashiyama University and teach. This was a super rich gold mine for Higashiyama University. She was a bit off topic, but under the guidance and supervision of the professors, Yang Guo's progress was very fast. She was about to finish writing. But today Poplar Fruit received a call. It was a call from an old friend who had been missing for a long time. After the call, Poplar Fruit was as excited as a kid. He waved his fist and jumped back into the living room. "Baby, at the end of next month, let's go to a movie in Beijing." Poplar Fruit wanted to pretend to be calm, but the smile on his face revealed his happiness. "Kiki wants to go too. Kiki wants to go too." Although Poplar Fruit did not discuss with Kiki, the little girl was the most anxious to express her opinion. She threw away the storybook in her hand and jumped happily on the sofa. "Kiki of course will go too," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Why do we have to go to Beijing to watch a movie?" Fang Beibei asked curiously as Kiki and Goldie cheered. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Cheonjuan, do you remember? I never thought that Zhu Beiji had other characters in the movie." "Oh, you said it before. Your friend." Fang Beibei nodded. However, Fang Beibei did not know how deep the relationship between Poplar Fruit and Cheonjuan was. She only thought that they were ordinary friends. After all, Fang Beibei had not seen Cheonjuan for more than a year. If they were really good friends, it wouldn't be too much for them to visit each other, right? Truth be told, Cheonjuan couldn't be blamed. He did not have many relatives in Yangqing City to begin with. Adding on to the fact that his acting career was booming, he was too busy to come back to Yangqing City. "He has a movie that will be released at the end of next month." Poplar Fruit smiled as he continued. "So he wants to invite me to the premiere." "He's that good? He's in a movie?" Fang Beibei was so shocked that her mouth curled up. "It's a movie by a writer that you like." Poplar Fruit chuckled. "Writer? You mean Xiao?" "No, I don't like Xiao Si." Fang Beibei guessed as she spoke. "Ah. Uncle, you mean Henin?" Looking at Fang Beibei's surprised and expectant face, Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "Yeah, it's Henin." "The premiere of his movie? I can see Henin?" Fang Beibei was so happy that she almost fainted. Xiao Si and Henin were 2 of the most successful young writers in the new century. They had a great influence on the new generation of young writers in the 80s and 90s. They were even more influential than Mo Yen, who won the Nobel Prize in Literature. Fang Beibei was Henin's fan. Poplar Fruit knew that long ago. Otherwise, Why would Fang Beibei have so many of Henin's works on her bookshelf? What kind of role does Che and play in Henin's movie? That movie is called Never See You Again, right? Fang Beibei counted with her fingers. She had been following Henin's Weibo. Poplar Fruit nodded and smiled. Yes, Never See You Again. His role is called Alu. It's a very important supporting role. Che is so good. Fang Beibei exclaimed. He can actually act in a movie now. Che was indeed good. He had only debuted for 2 years, but he had jumped from web dramas to movies. First, he acted in Unexpectedly and other web dramas released by Wan Hatiani. Then, he took the opportunity that Wan Hatiani gave him to act in 3 TV dramas. He slowly moved from a minor character to an important supporting role. Now he was in Henin's new movie. Although he was only a supporting role, who could say that he couldn't be the main character in the next movie? The most important thing was that Che wasn't an ungrateful guy. His current achievements had long surpassed the other actors and directors of Wan Hatiani. However, he still kept his contract with Wan Hatiani. When he didn't have any other schedule, he would come back to participate in some of Wan Hatiani's popular web dramas and micromovies. Not only that, Che role as a supporting role also gave Bai Ku and other friends a chance to make cameo appearances. This was a rare opportunity for the entire Wan Hatiani to show his face. Now he called Poplar Fruit to sincerely invite Poplar Fruit to attend the premiere of his first movie as a friend. He knew how to repay the favor. He didn't forget the support that Poplar Fruit had given him. Wan Hatiani didn't get involved in the movie industry. It can be said that this opportunity to take off was fought for by himself. He relied on his own ability. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, just based on his first report card after stepping into the entertainment industry, we have to go and see it. So I just asked him for 2 more seats. Our family will go. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. What about Sister Yujia? Didn't she also help a lot? Fang Beibei asked. Just now, Poplar Fruit said that Zheng Yujia helped Wan Hatiani's actors find opportunities to act in TV dramas through her family. Don't worry about her. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, she will also go, but that's an invitation to Wan Hatiani. You don't have to worry. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 1100. At Higashiyama University, in the largest conference room of the foreign languages faculty, no one was sitting. Even Poplar Fruit, who had been typing on the computer for 4 hours, was not sitting down. It's finally done. A white-haired old professor held a stack of freshly printed manuscripts and sighed. He was not the only one. The 9 old professors present each had a stack of manuscripts in their hands. Because they had been typing for a month, their expressions were no longer excited. Instead, they were filled with endless emotion. This will be the future of Chinese culture. An old professor closed his eyes, and a turbid tear rolled out from the deep wrinkles in the corner of his eye. He could not help but sigh. Since the founding of China, many generations of scholars had worked tirelessly, but they had not been able to break the barrier between Chinese and the outside world. Although the Confucius Institute in this century was powerful, no one knew that it was actually the country that was losing money. However, after today, these difficulties would become a thing of the past. Because they had the word-splitting method, a butterfly's wing that could reverse the situation. A small theory would completely change the status of Chinese in the international community. In the past, because of the difficulty of learning Chinese, the mystery of China, the gap between culture and system, many people who were eager to learn about China were unable to do so. Many Chinese students who were attracted by the propaganda returned in disappointment. Then in the future, when Chinese became as easy to learn as English, would these once disappointing scenes appear in front of the world again? From passive promotion to letting people actively learn. How big of a difference would this be? The world was no longer an era of single-minded development. Globalization and diversity were the mainstream of the world. If it could not become one of the brightest pearls of cultural diversity, and become one of the trends that the world could accept and like, then Chinese would sooner or later be gradually eliminated because it could not keep up with the speed of development. Chinese culture, with a history of more than 5,000 years, did not deserve such treatment. One must know that when we were in the age of firearms, Europe and America were still eating raw meat and drinking blood in the dark. Not to mention, the country next to it originated from China. Such a small country could become one of the trends of the world's culture. Chinese culture was thousands of times more profound and wonderful. It was unjustifiable that it did not develop well. Of course, openness and tolerance were the secrets of the country's success, but it did develop its own culture to the extreme. Chinese culture could do it as well, because the word-splitting method would become a wedge for it to go global. The old professors here were all Chinese scholars, but they were not just Chinese scholars. Just like Great Master Ji back then, their research crossed national borders and often cooperated with top foreign universities. Naturally, they could acutely discover the value of the word-splitting method. Just like Shang Yang's reform, Adam Smith's publication of The Wealth of Nations, and the birth of the first computer in the United States of America, the word-splitting method was not only epoch-making, but also the beginning of a language revolution. But today, it had finally been perfected and could be promoted in a comprehensive way. The old professors had suppressed the surging enthusiasm in their hearts for too long. It was not until today that everything was settled that they could vent it out without caring about their dignity. "Oldly, let me see your copy." An old professor pushed the old professor who was crying and laughing like a child. "What are you doing? Don't you have one in your hand too?" He actually used his own body to protect it, as if he was protecting a cub. "Why are you reacting so strongly? Aren't we all different? I want to see the accuracy of sound you wrote at the end." The old professor patted his arm, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Don't waste time, hurry up and give it to me. Little Yang is still printing, but I can't wait." This time, Yang used the word-splitting method based on the various perspectives of Chinese characters, including Wen-yin chapter, pictographic chapter, imitated characters chapter, and so on. There were a total of 7 chapters and 11 sections, with a total of 1.2 million words. Now the 9 old men only had the last 5 chapters and 9 sections in their hands. Poplar Fruit was still arranging for the school's assistant to print out the first chapter. But in fact, except for the last section, which was the one that Poplar Fruit spent 4 hours sorting out the scattered research data, the other 9 old men had already read it. So in order to prevent the old men from fighting, Poplar Fruit asked his assistant to print out a few more copies of the last section for them. "I can't wait to see it published," an old man murmured as he touched the A4 manuscript that still had the smell of the printer. Poplar Fruit walked in. When he heard this sentence, his eyes were also burning with passion. Who didn't want their work to be published? Who didn't want their work to be held in the hands of more people as treasures? Who didn't want their blood and sweat to go to the world and become the main force of cultural dissemination? Although this was something that was set in stone, Poplar Fruit's heart was still surging when he heard it. This would be Poplar Fruit's most important and valuable work since he entered the publishing industry. Although there would be countless names in the editorial team in the future, Poplar Fruit would definitely be placed as an author, and one of a kind. This was the first time Professor Yin had given Yang Guo an affirmative answer during the first meeting. Otherwise, why would they give Poplar Fruit half a year to perfect this theory? Why would they only guide and supervise instead of personally participating in it? This was the love that the older generation had for Poplar Fruit, a junior worthy of their support and training. It can't be that fast, right? The publication needs to be reviewed first, right? An old professor poured cold water on the idea. He was relatively calm. "Review what? Isn't that what we've been doing for the past 6 months?" The old professor laughed and scolded. "That's right, in the whole of China, which other experts and scholars were more qualified to take on the responsibility of reviewing? These 1.2 million words had been written by them, who had followed up and guided them closely. Did they still need someone else to review them? Maybe we need to find Chinese students and foreign Confucius institutes to conduct pilot teaching, but I believe this pilot will not take long." Professor Yuan Xinlin, who was the most qualified among the 9 people, walked up and gently patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder. He smiled and said, "At least 2 to 3 months, at most half a year. The country will not let your efforts go to waste. Also, we are very much looking forward to its release. We are very, very looking forward to it." Professor Yuan laughed. The other professors also smiled at Poplar Fruit. So it's up to us now. Poplar Fruit could relax. He had completed the most important step of the research. The rest was up to the performance of the other national treasured professors, with huge resources and channels. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 1101. What was the most important thing in June of 2014? If someone said it was the NBA Finals, countless people would definitely spit on him. The NBA Finals were indeed very important, and all the Chinese fans, including Poplar Fruit, were eagerly watching the battles that represented the sharpest spear and the strongest shield. However, that was not the most important thing in June. That was because, in terms of global influence, basketball was far inferior to the magic of the black and white elf. That's right, it was the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. It was a grand event for billions of fans around the world. It was broadcasted live on dozens of national television stations around the world. Tens of thousands of media outlets and reporters rushed to Brazil to report. Tens of millions of rich fans gathered in Brazil, and the heat of the samba would ignite the passion of the world. Nothing could stop the fans from going crazy for this grand event. Even if they had only made it to the World Cup once in history, and even if the national pig was scolded badly, the enthusiasm of the Chinese fans did not diminish. As early as the beginning of June, the sports channels of the major TV stations had already begun intensive coverage. Even CCTV's Let's Talk had invited the former football superstar, the eternal heartthrob Beckham, as a guest. In the show, Beckham talked about his dreams and the importance of his family in his career. He even called his family the key to him getting out of the trough when he was a player. Later on, Beckham still showed his side of being a fan of his daughter. My greatest success came from my family and my children. I know everyone is very supportive of them. They are all playing football now, and I am very proud of it. My daughter, Little Seven, I know everyone likes Little Seven very much. She is a very cute little girl, just like my son. Of course, there is also Victoria. Poor three sons. Their combined weight was not as good as Little Seven's. His son only said one sentence, but his daughter was full of praise. When she said it, the smile on her face was like a blooming chrysanthemum. Brooklyn and the others don't have any objections? Watching the television, Poplar Fruit looked at Beckham sitting on the sofa next to him, and said with a smile, "Yes, Beckham appeared in Beijing 2 days ago to record a show and conduct some business activities, then came to Guangzhou. Everyone knew about Beckham's schedule, but no one knew that Beckham had run over last night and hid in Poplar Fruit's house. Then he dragged Poplar Fruit to watch the game early in the morning. Not only that, but he also took a selfie with Poplar Fruit and uploaded it to his INS. He showed off and said, 'Hey, I'm watching the NBA Finals with my superhero brother. Does anyone want to join me?' Aside from having a business event in Guangzhou tomorrow, Beckham also wanted to pay a visit to Poplar Fruit. After Poplar Fruit became a world-famous hero at the beginning of the year, he had called Poplar Fruit several times to praise him. Unfortunately, he was a busy man and had no choice. Of course, Beckham didn't come alone today. In the afternoon, Victoria would bring her 3 sons and Little Seven to Guangzhou. Among them, Victoria and Beckham had to attend a business event, and Little Seven had to come over to play with his good friend Kiki. As for the 3 sons who were too lazy to travel around the world with their father, they were all here for Poplar Fruit. What's the point of having opinions? Beckham took a sip of beer and winked at Poplar Fruit. He smiled and said, "The daughter is the father's lover in the previous life, isn't that right?" Yang Guo laughed involuntarily and asked, "How do you know this sentence?" "Hee, there are many Chinese among my fans." Beckham smiled slyly. Beckham waved his hand and said to Poplar Fruit, "Why are you watching this show? Didn't you say you wanted to watch the game? Hurry up, if I didn't come to China, I would want to watch the finals live." Poplar Fruit smiled and transferred him to CCTV 5. Although Beckham didn't understand Chinese, Poplar Fruit didn't intend to teach him the same language. He would just have to put up with it. Today was the 9th, 5 days before the start of the World Cup. Beckham, who was busy making money in China, naturally couldn't pay attention to the NBA Finals. He wouldn't leave China until the last day to go to Brazil to watch the World Cup. Leon, are you really not coming with us to Brazil? Beckham asked. I still have a few tickets here. You can watch any game you want. Poplar Fruit reluctantly looked away from Beckham's hand and sighed. He shook his head and said, I'm sorry, David. I can't leave because I have something to do. You know, the remote teaching activity I did. Now that the national policy was out, it was directly promoted by the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Youth League called Project Dawn. Perhaps it was because Poplar Fruit casually mentioned it to the #1 leader at the time. This big move was bigger than Poplar Fruit previously estimated. Not only Guangdong Province, but several large provinces and municipalities with strong educational resources, such as Shanghai, Beijing, Jiangnan, were mobilized to encourage college students to volunteer to join the public welfare activities of teaching in poor mountainous areas. As for the provinces that benefited, other areas of Guishan Province, the Daliangshan area of Chuan Province, and the 73 poor counties of Kaiyun Province were in the first batch of pilot operations. There would definitely be more in the future. This time, the country really put in a lot of effort to support the remote teaching activity. Not only did the government allocate money to fully equip the teaching equipment, but it also asked the education department below to provide manpower and material support. Moreover, the students from various universities who participated in this public welfare activity would receive funds and honor as rewards. Judging from this scale, what was the difference between this and the educated youth movement in the past? Even if the number of people might not be comparable, the difference was not too big. Of course, there was still a difference. In the past, the young students were forced to go to the mountains. But this time, it was a public welfare activity, a voluntary activity, and there was no coercion. In addition to the use of high-tech, remote teaching solved the limitations of time and space. It could mobilize the volunteer enthusiasm of the young students. And it could bring real change to the poor mountainous areas. In terms of effect and meaning, remote teaching was definitely much more than in the past. Of course, the involvement of the country also made remote teaching a political color. Moreover, the Remote Teaching Public Welfare Association led by Poplar Fruit in Guangdong Province's universities also felt a little like a mere figurehead. However, this change was gratifying, because more people would benefit from remote teaching. Wasn't this the purpose of Poplar Fruit's promotion of remote teaching? Since the country was here, what else did Poplar Fruit and his partners need to do? No, Poplar Fruit still needed to do a lot. He no longer needed to work hard in the mountains, but he needed to lead his team to pass on his experience and methods to more staff members. He needed to tour the universities in the country to give lectures and spread the seeds of the public welfare spirit of remote teaching. Perhaps in the future, Poplar Fruit would not lead a larger scale of remote teaching reform, or even further evolution. Perhaps in the future, Poplar Fruit only needed to do teaching and research activities in English teaching. Perhaps in the future, Poplar Fruit only needed to lead a small team to be responsible for the education and development of Xiong Village, which he had always been concerned about. But now Poplar Fruit was very important. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 1102. Uncle David. Beckham came very late last night, so Chi-Chi didn't know. When she woke up, she was carried downstairs by Fong Beibei with sleepy eyes. When she found Beckham sitting in the living room, she screamed and cheered. Kiki wasn't old enough to chase after celebrities, and she didn't scream for Beckham. If she did, Poplar Fruit would chase Beckham out with a broom. She only had one goal. After getting down from Fong Beibei's arms, Chi-Chi ran around energetically and searched for Beckham. In the end, she ran in front of Beckham and asked pitifully and disappointedly, "Uncle David, where's little Seven?" Fong Beibei was a lot more reserved in front of the world's superstar. Yesterday, she even stuttered when greeting him. And today, she hid beside Poplar Fruit. She wasn't as bold and natural as Kiki. Fong Beibei, who understood Kiki's simple English, pulled Poplar Fruit's sleeve timidly when she saw Kiki's impudent behavior. "It's okay." Poplar Fruit patted Fong Beibei's arm and said with a smile, "We're familiar with him." "My cute little princess, do you miss little Seven?" Beckham stood in front of little Chi-Chi, placed one hand in front of his body, and bowed slightly. He made a handsome gentleman's bow and asked with a charming smile. Unfortunately, Kiki didn't buy it. She only thought about little Seven. She nodded and said, "Yes, little Seven is my good friend. I didn't even know you were here. Little Seven is so naughty." She didn't tell her sister. Haha, okay. Little Seven isn't naughty. She wanted to give you a surprise. Beckham waved his hand when he saw Kiki starting to search again. But she's not here yet. She'll arrive in Yangqing in about 4 hours. Then. Kiki thought for a while and looked up at Beckham. Then what are we waiting for? Hurry up and pick up little sister little Seven. My papa has a car. He can drive us. Well, he can also pick up Xiaoqi. Beckham looked at Chi-Chi and then at the NBA finals that were being broadcast on TV. His expression became conflicted. Kiki, don't worry. Poplar Fruit walked up and rubbed Kiki's head. He smiled and said, "There are still 4 hours left. You don't have to wait there so early." Then, what if little sister little Seven comes early? Will the plane arrive earlier? Kiki asked worriedly with drooping eyebrows. Beckham raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't know that Kiki knew so much at such a young age. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "How can that be? The plane in this world will only be later, not earlier." However, since they were already up, Poplar Fruit still wanted to see the porridge he had cooked. Flour crab and pumpkin porridge was definitely Kiki's favorite breakfast. However, Poplar Fruit rarely made it recently because he was too busy some time ago. He didn't have time to buy crab to make porridge in the morning. Today, Kiki benefited from Beckham's help. A large pot full of large flour crabs, each weighing half a catty, were all split open and thrown in to cook. The porridge that was cooked out, the pumpkin and crab meat were boiled to a pulp. The golden pumpkin and white rice porridge, together with the flour crabs, was also a delicious dish that looked, smelled, and tasted good. Poplar Fruit turned off the fire. Fong Bebe walked in and opened the cupboard to take the tableware. She said, "Uncle, go back and watch the game with Beckham. I don't speak the language, so it's awkward to sit there. Besides, don't all men like to watch the game?" Fong Bebe's thoughtfulness made Poplar Fruit very happy. He kissed Fong Bebe and returned to the living room. In the living room, Beckham was staring at the ball intently. Chi-Chi, on the other hand, was restless. She shifted around, sometimes looking at the ball, sometimes looking out the window. Perhaps her heart had already flown to the plane that was still in the sky. Seeing Poplar Fruit sit down, Beckham seemed to have found someone to talk to. He asked, "Leon, do you think James can lead the Heat to a 3rd consecutive championship? This is the rise of another dynasty after Jordan. It's very difficult, isn't it?" Poplar Fruit frowned and said, Finally, he talked about something he knew better. Just now, during the talk, the host asked Beckham about his prediction of the World Cup semifinals. Beckham's opinion was England, Brazil, Argentina, and Spain. Admittedly, England was Beckham's own country, and there was nothing wrong with supporting it. However, most of the countries on this list were traditional football powerhouses. There were also some countries that Poplar Fruit liked more. England's Poplar Fruit was not prepared to argue with Beckham, but Poplar Fruit felt that Brazil was not strong enough. Spain was also a little lethargic this year. "I think the champion England will be Germany." Poplar Fruit simply made his own guess. He chose the German team for no other reason than because this team had both offense and defense. It had the most balanced and stable fighting power, and was likely to be able to go on. However, Beckham's criticism of Poplar Fruit's choice was also very reasonable. The German team was stable, but they did not have as strong an impact as Argentina's Messi, Portugal's Cristiano Ronaldo, and Brazil's Neymar. One had to know that on the football field, scoring goals was the only philosophy. Even if the balance of offense and defense was very good, it was easy to be directly swallowed up by a team with strong offensive power. As for the lethargic West Country, didn't they still have St. Cassie? Well, Poplar Fruit did not dabble much in football, but Poplar Fruit considered himself a die-hard basketball fan. He also liked to play with his classmates in school. As for this year's NBA Finals, Poplar Fruit more approved of the Spurs, who were also terrifyingly stable, than the Heat, who came with the power of 3 consecutive championships. I think the Spurs have a higher chance of winning, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. How can that be? Beckham did not agree. He shook his head as he watched the game and said, this year's Spurs are basically no different from last year's Spurs. David, you have to look at the development, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Think about how difficult it was for the Heat to win against the Spurs last year. The Spurs players are very healthy this year, and Leonard is more mature. This year's Heat is not optimistic. They only have one James, and Wade's strength has been greatly reduced, let alone Bosh. Wow. Beckham's cheers interrupted Poplar Fruit's explanation. It turned out that Fong Beibei had already brought the flour crab pumpkin porridge over. She saw Poplar Fruit and the others chatting enthusiastically, so she directly brought the porridge to the coffee table. Eat breakfast. Fong Beibei stammered in English. She lacked practice in speaking, and it was difficult for her to speak simple words. Thank you. What a beautiful porridge. I believe it must be delicious. Thank you very much for your hospitality, Beckham said with a smile. This is flour crab porridge. Crab. It's very delicious. Kiki struggled out of her father's arms. Her eyes were already as bright as the morning sun outside the window. She explained to Beckham while holding her small bowl and waiting. It's very delicious. Beckham took the large bowl of porridge that Fong Beibei had scooped for him. He could not wait to taste it. He immediately praised loudly. No, I have to take a picture first. This is a combination of art and food. Of course, this porridge was cooked by the great chef, Poplar Fruit. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to. Chapter 1103. I have to say your prediction is really bad. Beckham's demonic laughter almost overturned the car. David, if you don't want everyone to find out that you're in my car, please close the window and shut your mouth. Poplar Fruit was depressed and said angrily. Of course, they were not arguing. They were just joking. Today, in the second game of the NBA Finals, the Heat actually turned the tables. And the key three-pointer in the end was made by Bosh, who Poplar Fruit thought was not good enough. This was a slap in the face. Otherwise, why would Beckham laugh at Poplar Fruit for an hour without stopping? Beckham's family was a big group of people. Besides them, there was also Victoria's assistant, makeup artist, and so on. Fortunately, the organizer of the commercial event had already sent a few luxury cars to pick them up. When the time came, Poplar Fruit only needed Fong Beibei's beetle to invite Beckham's family to his house. At night, Beckham's family should be going back to the hotel. Beckham's agent had already booked the hotel, but Beckham did not go there yesterday. However, from Brooklyn's intentions, it seemed that they wanted to get closer to Poplar Fruit, so it was uncertain if they would stay. Although Beckham's family came with a big group of people, it seemed that they did a good job of keeping it a secret. The airport did not have a sea of people. Wrap your clothes properly and be careful to keep your head down. Poplar Fruit nagged. Fong Beibei held Kiki's hand and listened to Kiki's soft translation. She covered her mouth and giggled. Leon, please, the weather in Guangzhou is very hot. Beckham breathed through his scarf. He was dressed as a Middle Eastern man, so Victoria probably would not recognize him. Poplar Fruit rolled his eyes and said, Who told you to have so many tattoos on your body? Even on your neck? China is more conservative. With so many tattoos, you're like a third wheel in the dark. Even if you wear sunglasses, you'll still attract attention. Just as the two were laughing and arguing, Xiaoqi's plane finally arrived. Daddy. This was little Seven's cheer when she saw Beckham. Beckham had already taken off her scarf. She let out a clear cry and rushed over, hanging it on her father's body. Then he couldn't go down anymore. As long as Beckham was around, little Seven wouldn't walk. Little Seven. Kiki also let her father carry her up so that she could get Xiaoqi. She giggled and said, I missed you so much. You finally came to my house to play. Sister Kiki, I missed you too. Little Seven reached out her hands and hugged Kiki. My daughter and Little Seven held each other's hands and didn't want to let go. They even laughed loudly and were extremely happy. Victoria, Little Seven has grown up a lot. Poplar Fruit greeted Victoria. Hee hee, that's right. She has also become a little fat girl. Victoria complained to Poplar Fruit. She doesn't want to eat less. It's all because David spoils her. Uncle, let's leave first? Let's talk about it when we get home. It seems that Beckham has been discovered by everyone. Feng Beibei tugged at Poplar Fruit's clothes and said to him. Feng Beibei found that it was very difficult for her to integrate into the conversation between Poplar Fruit and Beckham's family. She couldn't even understand what they were saying. However, Kiki was able to communicate with them fluently, which made her a little depressed. I have to learn English later and ask Uncle to teach me. Even if I don't know how to write, I have to practice speaking well. Feng Beibei secretly made up her mind. Victoria, this is my wife, my fiancée. You can call her Betty. Poplar Fruit smiled and introduced Feng Beibei and Victoria. Then he relayed Feng Beibei's worries. Victoria was experienced and knowledgeable. With a wave of her hand, a group of people under the protection of bodyguards left in a grandiose manner. They didn't stay any longer and escaped before the crowd at the airport surrounded them. That's Beckham? A passenger muttered as he held a Coke and stared at their backs in a daze. He even forgot to bite the straw as he muttered to himself. Yes. Why is he here? His friend next to him was also dizzy and couldn't accept the fact for a moment. Beckham walked past me and I actually forgot to ask for his autograph. Finally, he came back to his senses and wailed miserably. In the airport, who knew how many people were howling like him because they missed the opportunity to get close to their idol? Regardless of that, Poplar Fruit and the rest had already left the airport as planned and returned home. Due to the late publicity from the passengers, the domestic media began to stir. Xiao Bei's arrival in Guangzhou wasn't strange. After all, the commercial activity had already started long ago. However, the popular Xiaoqi also came to China. That was big news. Not only that, but Xiao Bei's family also came. And when they quoted the foreign media's report on Beckham's INS, people were surprised to find out that Beckham had stayed at Poplar Fruit's home yesterday. In fact, the good relationship between Poplar Fruit and Beckham was old news. Last year, the two families watched Frozen together in Bali was reported. And this year, because Frozen was well received in China, this news was picked up again to hype it up. Kiki, Xiaoqi, and Princess Givenchy's duet made many people fall over. Regarding the news that Beckham was playing at Poplar Fruit's home, Poplar Fruit's fans were naturally proud and didn't make a fuss about it. However, for many fans who didn't know the situation, it was quite eye-catching. On the way back, Feng Beibei drove Victoria, Xiaoqi and Kiki in a Beetle. Poplar Fruit and the group of men sat in a Land Rover. In the car, Brooklyn couldn't sit still. He excitedly clung to the front seat and asked happily, Leon, Superman, are you really Superman? No, Uncle Leon is Wolverine. He has knives in both hands. Ha! Cruz, who was less than 10 years old, also became a fan of Poplar Fruit because of the video of Poplar Fruit defeating the knife-wielding thugs. Beckham shook his head and sighed. My 3 children have always wanted to come to China, because you became a superhero. I'm not. I like Uncle Leon, because of Uncle Leon's novels. Romeo, who was a little quiet, said, 9 Chinese dragons pulling a coffin through the universe. My God, this scene is so magnificent. It's even more wonderful than Harry Potter. It makes my blood boil. Uncle Leon, how did you come up with such a scene? There is actually a little fan of the online novel translation launched by New Translation Road Publishing House. Poplar Fruit was a little surprised. He laughed and said, Romeo, you have to know, I'm just a translator. I translated Shrouding the Heavens. The author is a web writer named Chen Dong. Have you seen the other book I translated, Tomb of God? That was also written by him. Well, the super beautiful Tomb of God was also written by him. Uncle Leon, can you help me get his autographed book? Many of my friends like his books. Romeo cried excitedly. Look at you. Brooklyn pulled Romeo down and took his place. He smiled and said, Uncle Leon, can you teach me Kung Fu? I also want to be like you. A master who can fight against 8 people. I want it too. I want it too. I want to be Uncle Leon's disciple. Cruz cried. You've lost all your integrity. Beckham covered his face. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 1104. Little 7. I asked Papa to leave some delicious flour crab and pumpkin porridge for you. In the car, Kiki and Little 7 continued to chat. Seeing her little friend whom she hadn't seen for more than half a year, Kiki naturally had a lot to say. Is it really delicious? Little 7 looked at Kiki with admiration and asked curiously, I'm so hungry. Little 7's admiration for Kiki had been long-standing. When she was a little girl, she felt that Kiki was very knowledgeable. Now she often pestered Kiki to tell her stories. In fact, the difference between the two was only a few months. It's really delicious. My papa said that he'll make more delicious food for you later. Seafood feast, red prawns, fragrant fish. Kiki said excitedly. Little 7 listened and couldn't stop drooling. Poplar fruit didn't let them down. They really made a sumptuous seafood feast for the Becks. The seafood was bought with the flour crab in the morning, which cost a few thousand yuan. It could be said that there was no other place where poplar fruit could make such a sumptuous meal. Even the big hotels didn't make poplar fruit's dishes as beautiful and delicious. For example, the soy sauce squid rolls. This dish required a chef's knife skills. Ordinary people could only make a taste, but poplar fruit cut the squid into various shapes of small animals, which made people reluctant to eat. Not to mention the classic Chinese seafood feast such as vermicelli scallops and oil-consuming abalones. Even the palm-sized prawns and poplar fruit could be made into a French feast. Each person had a plate of cheese-baked prawns, which was so delicious that Brooklyn wanted to swallow his tongue. Don't think that one prawn per person was too little, because there were other dishes. Didn't you see Little 7 crying while eating? Woo-woo, I'm full but I still want to eat. Everyone couldn't help but laugh. After he finished eating, Brooklyn howled in pain. Oh no! I forgot to take a picture. The smell was so tempting that he couldn't even bear to put down his chopsticks. How could he remember to take a picture? Haha, you loser. Beckham proudly waved his phone and said, When I sneaked into the kitchen, I already took a picture and uploaded it. During this time, Poplar Fruit's phone kept ringing. Many media outlets who had interviewed Poplar Fruit before wanted to approach him, but Poplar Fruit politely rejected them. Later, Poplar Fruit simply turned off his phone. Thanks to the security guards in the neighborhood, the reporters didn't break in. Poplar Fruit's house wasn't small. Of course, it paled in comparison to Beckham's. It was a small house compared to a big house. However, Beckham's family didn't seem to mind. He had eaten too much and needed to digest the food. Kiki and Little 7 played with Goldie. Goldie was already a big golden retriever, but it was docile and obedient. It wasn't scary at all. It looked furry and beautiful. Even Little 7 boldly hugged Goldie's neck and affectionately played with it. The little book fan Romeo went into Poplar Fruit's study and flipped through the books translated by Poplar Fruit. Brooklyn and Cruz pulled Poplar Fruit to his practice room to do some men's things. Master. The two of them unexpectedly knelt down together. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he helped them up and asked, What are you doing? Where did you learn this? Kung Fu Panda. That's what Pa did. Cruz revealed. Uncle Leon, teach us Kung Fu. We also want to be Superman. Brooklyn looked at Poplar Fruit with fanatical eyes and said, No, it's to become Wolverine. Cruz corrected. Looking at Beckham who was laughing at the side, Poplar Fruit said with a wry smile, Why do you have such thoughts? Kung Fu isn't like what you see in the movies. Practicing Kung Fu is very difficult. Poplar Fruit explained a little about the difficult practice of Kung Fu. The two boys were not afraid and said, We also practice football every day. How can we shrink back just because of a little hardship? Hearing this, Beckham on the side curled his lips. Well, Poplar Fruit couldn't refuse, so he let them stand in the horse stance for the shortest time of 20 minutes to test them. The results were predictable. Cruz couldn't even stand for 2 minutes. Brooklyn held on for 5 minutes and fell to the ground crying. When you practice Kung Fu, what do you want to do the most in your heart? Poplar Fruit squatted on the side, pressed down on their thighs, and helped them gently massage to eliminate muscle fatigue. Brooklyn answered without hesitation. I want to become more handsome, like Uncle Leon. In England, There are many girls who want to give birth to monkeys, children for you. Cruz also nodded in agreement. Well, these two brats were only learning kung fu to act cool and handsome. When did they really want to learn kung fu? This was easier. Poplar Fruit thought about it, and taught them a few ultra-simplified moves of Wing Chun. Poplar Fruit deleted some of the difficult and small movements, leaving only the big and cool movements, and then integrated some of the gorgeous kung fu moves in the movies to teach them. They didn't learn that quickly. Brooklyn directly took out his phone and recorded Poplar Fruit's explanation of the moves, so he could go back and slowly study it. This kung fu just looks cool. It can't make you Superman. Poplar Fruit waved his hand and smiled. Don't use it to bully others. Be careful not to get beaten up so badly that even David can't recognize you. Brooklyn excitedly nodded and said, No problem, I don't want to be Superman either. That's too tiring. With this kung fu, there will definitely be many beauties who will fall for me. Hey kid, I don't want you to become a playboy. Beckham walked up and slapped him on the back of the head. They didn't eat at home that night. Although Poplar Fruit's cooking skills were comparable to international chefs, since they were in Yangcheng, how could Poplar Fruit let them stay at home? He decisively brought Beckham and his family to the top-floor restaurant of Yangcheng City's most beautiful restaurant. The expensive Western food at the top-floor restaurant wasn't as good as Poplar Fruit's, but Poplar Fruit and the rest weren't eating the food, but the feelings. They were enjoying the night view of Yangcheng City. As Poplar Fruit expected, at night, Little Seven was reluctant to part with Kiki. He cried and refused to go back to the hotel with Beckham and Victoria. However, Beckham and the others were going to attend a business event tomorrow. Later, Beckham had no choice but to leave the three brothers and Little Seven at Poplar Fruit's house. The next day, the bad Poplar Fruit took Brooklyn to play basketball. He wanted to take revenge for the abuse he suffered in Bali. Romeo and Cruz clearly supported Poplar Fruit. Little Seven initially supported his brother, but then he was fascinated by Poplar Fruit's elegant hands. He immediately changed his position and waved at Kiki and loudly cheered for Poplar Fruit. Brooklyn, who used to beat Poplar Fruit in football, was in a real tragedy this time. Poplar Fruit's basketball skills were strong, and with his physical fitness, it was easy for him to beat Brooklyn. Later, Brooklyn was beaten by Poplar Fruit until he was in a trance. Even later, when he was signing autographs for the onlookers, Brooklyn was frowning as if he had been taken advantage of. In fact, Beckham was still very busy. He still had to go to Hong Kong to attend a business event, so they had to take the high-speed train to leave at night. Dad, Uncle Leon is a big demon. When Beckham and the others came back to pick up the four siblings, Brooklyn complained to Beckham with tears and snot running down his face. However, Beckham didn't pay attention to Brooklyn's fragile little heart, because Little Seven, who was sitting on his strong right arm, was happily telling Beckham about the fun he had with Kiki. Xiao Bei was all smiles as he nodded his head in agreement. Daddy, let's come and play with big sister Chi-Chi next time, okay? Little Seven shook her beautiful golden braid that was the same as Chi-Chi's and giggled. No. Brooklyn weakly turned his head and protested, but he was quickly pushed away by Beckham. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to asterisk. Chapter 1105. Beckham left, but the influence of his stay was still there. In addition to the reporters that popped up from time to time, when Poplar Fruit went to school, teachers and students would run to Poplar Fruit to ask for his autograph. Beckham was the same. When he was interviewed by reporters abroad, there would be a few questions about his relationship with Poplar Fruit. Unlike Poplar Fruit, Beckham would not avoid the reporter's interview. He smiled and said that his family and Poplar Fruit's family were very good friends. Little Seven likes Leon's daughter Kiki very much. She is really cute, like Little Seven, a very beautiful little angel. For the sake of Sister Chi-Chi, Little Seven was even willing to give up her closest and most handsome father. Oh, I'm so sad. Beckham pretended to be sad. Leon is a very good person. His study is like a library, full of books. Romeo likes it very much. When he came back, he wanted me to buy him a lot of books. Brooklyn and the others, as you can see, they all admire Leon's kung fu very much. Beckham shook his head and smiled. Oh yes, Leon is a very interesting friend because his guesses about the NBA Finals and the World Cup are wrong. Haha. The semester was not over yet, and the World Cup had just started. But Poplar Fruit had already begun to worry, because Kiki had reached the age where she could enter a kindergarten. Poplar Fruit did not want to find a kindergarten for Kiki before, because he thought that his own training would be more effective for Kiki. But now he had some changes in his thinking. On the one hand, Poplar Fruit would be very busy next semester because he had a university lecture tour. He might need to fly around the country. Even Higashiyama University had cancelled Poplar Fruit's public elective course, leaving only a professional elective course in Swedish. This was to give Poplar Fruit more time to plan his speech. Fong Bebe also needed to take care of the pet hospital. Her own courses doomed her to not spend much time with Kiki during the day. In the past, Grandma Chin could help take care of him, but this was not a long-term solution. Poplar Fruit's parents had also mentioned that they could help take care of Kiki, but both Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe felt that it had deviated from Poplar Fruit's original intention of not letting Kiki attend kindergarten. After all, the older generation's teaching of children was not scientific and energetic enough. On the other hand, Kiki also had such a request. Although the little fellow was still sticking to Poplar Fruit as usual, she was also eager to meet more friends. Didn't you see that after little Seven left, the little guy was depressed for a long time? Sometimes, kindergartens were not only children's education or nursery, but also a preparation or buffer zone for primary school. Children who grew up with their parents, like pearls in their palms, needed a place like this to learn how to get along well with children of the same age, and learn how to communicate politely with teachers who were older than them but not their parents. Although many parents now regarded kindergartens as a starting line booster for their children, in the education concept of foreign countries, kindergartens were a small society for children to learn the basics of how to conduct themselves in society. Although Poplar Fruit was born in the countryside and had a somewhat traditional father, he was not pedantic. After reading a lot of Western literature, Poplar Fruit's thinking was somewhat inclined towards the Western model. It was reasonable to say that a child like Kiki, who was born with a high IQ, would be taught English at 1 year old, ancient poetry at 2 years old, painting at 3 years old, piano at 4 years old. After the whole Chinese style of force-feeding education, the child would probably be able to fly by the age of 10. However, Poplar Fruit did not. All the knowledge that Kiki knew was not deliberately or forced by Poplar Fruit to learn it. Poplar Fruit would create a very good atmosphere for Kiki, but he would not rush the seedlings to help them grow. Instead, he chose to let Kiki slowly improve under the influence of others. Compared to knowledge education, Poplar Fruit was more inclined towards personality education. Therefore, at home, Poplar Fruit would preach to Kiki some bad habits that Kiki inadvertently learned. Then he would tell Kiki some short philosophical stories from ancient and modern times, so that she would gradually accept some traditional moral spirit as she listened to the stories. Therefore, in terms of kindergarten selection, Poplar Fruit did not intend to let Kiki go to kindergarten that was very good in the eyes of modern Chinese parents. This also meant that Poplar Fruit directly gave up the house that he bought at a high price and the various good degrees that covered it. It was also because of this that Poplar Fruit had a headache and spent time with Fong Bebe every day to find a good kindergarten. It was not that there were no recommendations. After Poplar Fruit told the teachers that he wanted to find a kindergarten for Kiki, there were immediately a lot of mothers and teachers who enthusiastically ran over to give Poplar Fruit a list. They even patted their chests and said that they could help Poplar Fruit find a kindergarten. However, the choices that these teachers gave were somewhat passable. Even the aristocratic kindergartens and bilingual kindergartens were very Chinese. The flyers emphasized a little too much on results. Poplar Fruit did not like it very much. Fortunately, Song Jiwen's father, Poplar Fruit's godfather, Song Chunfang, was more well-informed. He found a completely Western-style kindergarten for Poplar Fruit, Wadafu Kindergarten. Coincidentally, Wadafu Kindergarten was not very far from Poplar Fruit's house. In fact, Wadafu Kindergarten in Guangzhou was one of the branches of a very famous private kindergarten chain in the United States. However, it seemed that this kindergarten's enrollment in China was mainly for the children of foreign executives working in China. Because of the positioning, many Chinese parents looked down on Wadafu Kindergarten. However, Poplar Fruit was more interested because they did not say that they changed their original model because of localization. They only integrated some traditional Chinese culture content because of the local materials. For example, they would recruit some kindergarten teachers who knew how to write with a brush, draw with a brush, understood traditional Chinese culture, and could adapt to the Western teaching model. However, although the locals did not think highly of Wadafu Kindergarten, not just anyone could casually put their child into it. Any child who wanted to enter the kindergarten would have to go through a small interview, just like the kindergartens in the United States. In order to register Kiki, Poplar Fruit brought Kiki to the interview. At first, Kiki was a little timid when facing the blonde, blue-eyed granny who spoke fluent Chinese. Poplar Fruit thought that there was no hope for her. Your daughter's divergent thinking is quite good. Although she's still a little nervous when answering questions, it's okay. We don't expect a child to face the interview calmly like an adult. The principal commented to Poplar Fruit behind them. On the contrary, during the interview, the principal often encouraged Kiki with a smile to ease her nervous mood. The principal's criticism of the current situation of China was merciless. She said to Poplar Fruit, "When the child answered my questions, she did not give a very standard answer. What I mean is that she did not prepare the answers in advance. This is good because authenticity and naivety are very important to a child. We adults should not take away a child's nature." "So she passed the interview?" Poplar Fruit asked happily. "Of course." The principal smiled and lowered her body. She looked at Kiki, who was hugging her father's thigh, and said, "Welcome, little angel, to Wadafu's big family." Kiki smiled shyly and sweetly, just like how Poplar Fruit felt at that moment. The tuition was not cheap. A semester would cost more than 100,000 yuan. After a year, he could go to Hong Kong to study abroad. Of course, money was not a problem for Poplar Fruit now. He could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Kiki would be settled for the next semester. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Chapter 1106. Time flew by, and a month had passed in the blink of an eye. In the past June and July, after the NBA and the World Cup were over, Beckham called Yang Guo from afar and exclaimed, "Why are you so godly, kid? You guessed it right." However, this was not important. What was important was that Poplar Fruit had graduated. That's right, he had become the first student in Higashiyama University's history to complete a doctorate in just 2 years. At Poplar Fruit's graduation ceremony, many important professors attended, suppressing the last few weak voices of doubt. There were well-known professors in the foreign language field, such as Professor Yuan Qinghe from the University of Guangdong and Professor Luo Lin from the University of Beijing. They were all old acquaintances of Poplar Fruit. They had met many times, whether in academic cooperation or academic exchange. There were also national treasured scholars in the field of Chinese literature, such as Professor Yuan Xinlin from Beijing University and Professor Lu Shufeng from Shuimu University. Any one of them could not be ignored, even on a national scale. With them expressing such confidence in Poplar Fruit, who would be willing to raise doubts? Didn't you see that such a large group of people had appeared at the graduation ceremony of the School of Foreign Languages? All the famous leaders of Higashiyama University were present. In fact, they did not just rush over to support Poplar Fruit. In the words of the ancients, everyone knows what Sima Zhao is thinking. In the words of Chen Zongdai, they were jealous. It's better not to come. Yes, people like Yuan Qinghe and Luo Lin had contacted Poplar Fruit several times before the graduation ceremony, trying to invite Poplar Fruit to teach at their university. Luo Lin was fine with it, but Yuan Qinghe had directly promised to be an associate professor. Wasn't this a blatant attempt to poach someone? People like Yuan Xinlin and Lu Shufeng still did not give up. They still wanted Poplar Fruit to continue studying for a doctorate in Chinese. In fact, Poplar Fruit had already received a new admission letter from Higashiyama University. In the next 2 years, Poplar Fruit would stay at Higashiyama University, just like before, to study for a doctorate in Chinese. With Poplar Fruit's personality, Naturally, he would not leave Guangdong. There were not many double doctorates, but there seemed to be a few. Poplar Fruit's doctorate in Chinese was not difficult at all. With his theory of word separation, if it was not for the domestic system's restraint, he would have been awarded a doctorate. Of course, Yongguo's human relations were still in the foreign languages school, and she was only a university lecturer. But according to Chen Zongdai's plan, Poplar Fruit should be promoted to associate professor next year. If he continued to publish academic works, maybe Poplar Fruit could be promoted to professor at the age of 30. Therefore, Poplar Fruit's graduation ceremony was not too sad. This graduation was not the end, but a new beginning. Next semester, it would be the beginning of a new semester, right? If June was the harvest season, then July was the busy season. A year of remote teaching had brought obvious changes to the poor mountainous students in Liang City. More than 500 sixth-grade students passed the entrance exam, and the enrollment rate jumped from the previous 3% to 23%. And the results of the Xiong family's children who had received 2 years of remote education were even more eye-catching. Their enrollment rate had reached 81%. One must know that in the past, the Xiong family did not necessarily have 2 or 3 students who could be admitted to the county's middle school. This year, more than 20 people were admitted to the middle school, and 16 of them were admitted to the key middle school. This included Xiong Xiaofeng, who had been at the bottom of the list for 10,000 years, but during the exam he broke out with 200% of his standard. Although he was not admitted to the key middle school, he was still ranked 17th, which was worthy of celebration. It was also this report card that made the country, and the Ministry of Education determined to popularize remote education. Yes, it was remote education, not remote teaching. The country decided to use 10 years as a transition period to use remote teaching to verify the effect of remote education. In the future, the education model in remote mountainous areas may gradually change from volunteer-led and state-supported remote teaching to state-led remote education with real employment system teachers. Perhaps, it could be popularized to the whole society, but this was a story for the future. Under the country's command, the 3 southwestern provinces began a large-scale rectification, an upgrading of the poor mountainous areas' schools. This time, Poplar Fruit did not need to personally lead the team. Even Fat Dragon and Kai Simin only led their technical staff to disperse and act as on-site guides in each area. Tens of thousands of equipment and manpower went deep into the poor mountainous areas to carry out the transformation work in full swing. These infrastructure works did not require Poplar Fruit's intervention, and Poplar Fruit's charity fund did not need to invest money in the purchase of equipment. Since the country had made up its mind to do remote teaching, naturally, it would not be stingy to the point of not being willing to invest hundreds of millions of funds. Otherwise, if a country's education needed private money or charity funding, even if it was not shameful, the people would question where the taxes paid by the country every year were spent. Without needing to worry about infrastructure work, Poplar Fruit was still very busy. He was busy in 2 ways. One was to invite the outstanding students of each grade under the remote teaching training in Liang City this year. Up to 500 students from poor mountainous areas came to Yangcheng to see the world with their own eyes with the university volunteers. In the past, Poplar Fruit only wanted to invite 100 students, but since the charity fund was saved, he could invite more students. Poplar Fruit had always attached great importance to the development of this summer program. Since 2 years ago, when he was in Xiong village, he had already buried this idea in his heart. Why was it said that remote teaching could bring about earth-shaking changes to the children in the poor mountainous areas? That was because remote teaching could let them come into contact with a different level, science and technology. With the power of science and technology, they could see the outside world and obtain the same quality of education as the children in the city. But everything they saw through a small screen could not compare to the bustling world they saw with their own bright eyes. The latter brought about 1,000 times more impact and motivation to learn than the former. Poplar Fruit followed behind the group and said with emotion to Wang Yuba, "These children are still young. They are not like adults who can't straighten their backs because of life. In the face of the bustling world outside, they still have a lot of challenges and passion to explore." Other than taking care of the 500 children, Poplar Fruit's other important task was to lead the core members of the remote teaching group in Yangcheng to communicate with the representatives of the student unions of the 100 or so key universities in the country. Because there were a lot of people, up to 300 people, they were divided into 3 groups. The time span was also more than 3 weeks. The scale of this was comparable to a national student union meeting, but the meaning was completely different. Because these selected representatives would be the founding members of the remote teaching group set up by the major universities in the future. There was no need to elaborate on the content. After all, it was a bit political. As the saying went, the general is brave, and the army is willing to sacrifice their lives. These people from the student union seriously recorded the experience that Poplar Fruit imparted to them. Perhaps the starting point of these people's efforts in the future would be fundamentally different from Poplar Fruit's, but Poplar Fruit would not dwell on this problem. Black cat, white cat, a cat that catches mice is a good cat. As long as it can benefit the children in the mountainous areas. Isn't that enough? Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations, greater than over equal to. Chapter 1107. On July 22nd, the premiere of Never See You Again was held in Beijing. This was the first movie of Han Han and Cheon-juan, the 2 newcomers in the film industry. It was also the first movie premiere that Poplar Fruit attended. Indeed, in the past, Poplar Fruit didn't even go to the movie premiere, let alone the premiere. Thinking about it, he was really a little happy and excited. Poplar Fruit's family didn't act alone, but followed Wan Hetiany's beasts, Baiku, Teacher Kong, and the others to enter the venue. Zheng Yujie directly booked a Lincoln limousine. This year, Wan Hetiany's momentum was booming, so they couldn't lose out in terms of ostentation. In the car, Zheng Yujie also reminded Kiki, who was a little uncomfortable and was moving the legs of her glasses. Kiki later, you have to wear the sunglasses properly, and then follow your father, you can't run around. Why? Kiki restlessly twisted her butt. The beautiful princess dress made a rustling sound on Poplar Fruit's Givenchy casual suit. Today there was such a big group of people moving together. And there was also the bald uncle that she liked very much. Later they could also watch a movie, so Kiki's excited mood simply couldn't sit still. Because later there will be a lot of people outside taking pictures, the flash of the camera will hurt the eyes. Fang Beibei explained with a smile while holding Kiki's hand. Zheng Yujie was still a little busy now. She still had to communicate with Wan Hetiany's few people about the order of getting off the car, so she didn't have time to deal with the little 100,000 whys. Later, Daddy will carry you, okay? Poplar Fruit asked as he tidied up Kiki's dress. No, Kiki wants to walk by herself. Kiki shook her head and said, Because Daddy won't look good holding the dress. Kiki was quite shameless. Looking at her blinking long eyelashes and big eyes, it was full of love for her dress. Moreover, Kiki didn't look nervous at all, unlike Fang Beibei. Poplar Fruit held her hand, only to find that her palm was sweaty. After the discussion, Zheng Yujie turned around in the car and said to Poplar Fruit, Later, I will go out with them. You guys go last. Poplar Fruit was a little surprised and asked with a smile, Really? I, the guest, will go last? Isn't this a bit too much? Zheng Yujie's light red lips pursed slightly and she smiled. No, in terms of fame, you are greater than all of us. In fact, you are the trump card of our Wan Hetiany. Letting you go last is also to give the media a surprise. Zheng Yujie looked at Fang Beibei's forehead, which was sweating because of nervousness. She thought about it and waved to Fang Beibei saying, Beibei, come here, I'll touch up your makeup. In front of such a big occasion, Zheng Yujie didn't care about personal feelings. Although it was a bit awkward to call Fang Beibei by her name, she thought, I won't embarrass you, because it will also embarrass Poplar Fruit. Don't think that I'm trying to be friendly. We're here. Suddenly, Poplar Fruit turned around and saw a long Lincoln parked outside the theater. The red carpet was on the side of the door, and the media had already gathered on both sides of the red carpet, with flashes flashing from time to time. At the entrance of the theater stood a group of people, including Han Han, the lead actors Feng Xiaofeng, Chen Bolin, and others. One person walked out of the crowd and strode toward the Lincoln. It was Cheon-juan. He was with Han Han and the others today. Compared to the past, Cheon-juan had changed a lot. Not only was he wearing an expensive suit, but his hair was also shiny and stiff. His temperament when walking on the red carpet was also vigorous. He finally looked like a celebrity. This kid, he doesn't forget his roots. The calling beast whispered softly, but Poplar Fruit heard it. Originally, the driver had already come down to open the door, but Cheon-juan waved his hand and walked over to open the door himself. At this time, Baiku walked out holding Gubu's hand. "Brother Che, congratulations." Gubu looked at Cheon-juan enviously. "Haha, Xiaogu, thank you." Cheon-juan looked at Baiku, shook his head, and said with a smile, "Let's not be so polite, shall we? This is also a movie that you acted in." "Hee, it's all thanks to you." Baiku and Cheon-juan lightly punched each other, then did the pose that good brothers often did in American movies. Finally, they lightly bumped shoulders. Although Baiku's path to stardom was not as smooth as Cheon-juan's, he was still a big star on the internet. Unexpectedly, the whole country knew about him, the funny Wang Dachui. As they walked down the red carpet, countless media reporters and fans shouted, "Wang Dachui." The second group to get off was Teacher Kong and Zimo. These two groups were a little interesting. They were not the most popular, but they were the most devilish. Just like Teacher Kong, he was a special effects artist, but he became popular and unexpectedly, when he dressed up as a woman. Not only did his cross-dressing not make people nauseous, but because of his appearance, people actually mistook him for a woman. Of course, Teacher Kong and Baiku also acted in Han Han's new movie together. As for Zimo, this guy was a director, but his roles were all very outstanding. Whether it was Sun Wukong or other characters, he could vividly express the characteristics of the characters. Sometimes, when he acted in some female roles, it would make people spit out rice. Compared to the goddess Teacher Kong, it would not be an exaggeration to describe him as a devilish god. The third group was Yaoshou and Zheng Yujie. Yaoshou was naturally the most popular, but not many entertainment reporters knew about Zheng Yujie. However, she did not have to pretend to be charming. She killed many reporters' films. If not for the interview on the other end of the red carpet, where Yaoshou introduced Zheng Yujie as a shareholder of Wan Hetiani, people would have mistakenly thought that she was a new actress that Yaoshou had hidden. Finally, the last group was coming out. The reporters and Cheon-juan were all staring intently at the black Lincoln limousine. Other than Cheon-juan, everyone was thinking, since Wan Hetiani's Yaoshou is coming out, who else is coming? A little girl wearing sunglasses was the first to jump out of the car. She had a pretty little face and an excited and innocent smile. She was wearing a white and cute princess dress like a cloud, and a pair of cute pink leather shoes on her feet. She looked like a little fairy who had descended to the human world. No, it should be called a little fairy who had lost her way. After Kiki got out, she was a little confused. She first looked around. However, she realized that there was a sea of people around her. Other than Uncle Cheon-juan in front, she did not recognize anyone else. Moreover, they were all holding cameras. The shutters that they subconsciously pressed burst out a few flashes. Although the sunglasses did not hurt her retina, Kiki was still shocked. Almost subconsciously, she timidly hid at the feet of her father who had just gotten out of the car, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1108. He had short hair, a handsome face and sharp eyebrows. His deep eyes were not cold, and his gentle smile was enough to melt the winter snow. He had a handsome appearance, a tall waist, a slender figure and a tailored casual suit. He had an aristocratic temperament, which was fascinating. Poplar Fruit was not a regular in the entertainment news, but he was definitely not a nobody. After a second of silence, a reporter exclaimed, and the scene boiled up again. Poplar Fruit. It's Poplar Fruit. The reporters were ecstatic and quickly pressed the shutters, and the flash splashed out like a rainstorm of pear blossoms. Who was the most difficult star to interview in the past 2 years? It was estimated that all the entertainment reporters would vote for Poplar Fruit. Although Poplar Fruit firmly believed that he was not a member of the entertainment industry, he used to be a supermodel popular all over the world, and he was also on the happy base camp of Mango TV. The reporters had already classified him as one of their own. Didn't they see the proud look of Poplar Fruit when he reached the top of the superheroes in March? However, Poplar Fruit was indeed very difficult to interview. The reporters could only start from the sidelines, and from time to time, they would report some news about Poplar Fruit. Sometimes, Poplar Fruit would post a few photos of him playing with his daughter, and they would be rushed to repost them. It could be said that although Poplar Fruit had not been in the entertainment industry, there had always been legends about him in the entertainment industry. Why is he here? This question popped up in the hearts of all the reporters, but they soon had an answer. Poplar Fruit. Chae-in-juan laughed at Poplar Fruit. Wait a minute. Poplar Fruit smiled at him apologetically. He helped Fong Beibei, who was nervous and at a loss, out of the car in a gentlemanly manner, and then turned to hug Chae-in-juan tightly. There had been rumors of Chae-in-juan and Poplar Fruit being good friends, but Chae-in-juan did not use the news to hype it up, so the reporters were not sure. But today, it seemed that the two men were really good brothers. What shocked them was that after Poplar Fruit let go, Chae-in-juan did something that no one expected. He actually bowed deeply to Poplar Fruit, and even Poplar Fruit was shocked. However, only Poplar Fruit understood what Chae-in-juan meant. The grace of sparing his life, the grace of recognizing his worth, the grace of guiding him, and even saying that without Yang Guo, he wouldn't be where he was today. Poplar Fruit's kindness to Chae-in-juan in the past was engraved in Chae-in-juan's heart. He knew that Poplar Fruit did not need him to repay anything, and Poplar Fruit did not lack anything, but he had to be grateful. With this bow, everything was conveyed without words. You don't have to do this. Yang Guo patted his arm and pulled Chae-in-juan up. Smiling, he put his arm around Chae-in-juan's shoulder and said, "We're good brothers. Why are you bowing?" Ehehe. Chae-in-juan laughed. He looked at Fong Beibei, who was standing nervously at the side, and quickly nodded to greet her. "This is sister-in-law, right?" "Hello, sister-in-law." It was the first time he met Fong Beibei, but Chae-in-juan was no stranger to Fong Beibei. When he secretly took photos of Poplar Fruit, Fong Beibei was the female lead. "Hello, Brother Chae, congratulations." Fong Beibei blushed and shook hands with him. On the other side, Poplar Fruit felt his trousers tighten. He looked down and saw that Kiki, who had said in the car that she did not want him to carry her, was hugging his thigh and looking at him eagerly. Poplar Fruit did not need to ask to know that his daughter was nervous. Yes, how could she not be nervous? Even Fong Beibei had stage fright, and Chi-Chi was still so young that she wouldn't dare to face the gazes of so many people without her father. The reason she said she didn't want her father to carry her was because she was too happy, and she didn't expect it to be such a big occasion. Poplar Fruit squatted down and gently held his daughter in his arms. Seeing that Kiki's tight little face finally relaxed a little, Poplar Fruit smiled brightly. Kiki did not know if she mistakenly thought that her father was laughing at her. She pouted her mouth and stretched out her little hand to scratch her father's face, especially his nose. She even imitated her father, pinched his nose and shook it. Her clear voice passed through the noise at the scene and reached Poplar Fruit's ears. "Papa, don't laugh at Kiki." No matter how scared she was, she could calm down in her father's arms. No matter how noisy it was outside, Kiki seemed to have entered the small space that her father had protected for her. No matter how noisy it was, she turned a deaf ear to it, and her mood became better again. Of course, Poplar Fruit not only had to take care of her, but also took care of Fong Beibei, who had encountered such a big scene for the first time. He gently held Fong Beibei with his empty right hand. Under the gaze of hundreds of people, the two looked at each other and smiled, as if the people around them were air. She is the top student goddess. Poplar Fruit and her relationship is so good. It has been 2 years, and the wind and rain have passed, but their relationship is still as sweet as before. Fong Beibei could only be regarded as an internet celebrity, but there were still reporters who knew her past with Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit this way. Chae-in-juan could not delay for too long, so he led the way in front. On the long red carpet, there were naturally interviews by reporters, and even Poplar Fruit was no exception. "Poplar Fruit, did you appear in Han Han's new movie because this year's Nobel Prize might be awarded to Han Han?" Why is the first question so strange? Isn't this reporter too imaginative? However, in addition to being a superhero, Poplar Fruit does have the nickname, Nobel Prize in Literature Golden Hand. Haha, where did you get the news? Actually, I was invited by my friend Cheonjuan. Today is his first big movie, so I came to support him. Poplar Fruit still gave face and mentioned Cheonjuan and movies a few times. Can I ask Mr. Poplar Fruit what you think of Han Han's works? This was the reporter who personally led Poplar Fruit to be interviewed by Cheonjuan, and the questions he asked were more conventional. The books written by director Han Han are very good. My girlfriend and I are his loyal fans. I believe that the movies he directs will be equally good. We are very much looking forward to it. Well, yes, loyal fans. I hope Cheonjuan will introduce me to director Han Han later. I finally see the real person. I have to ask for a few autographed books. Poplar Fruit pulled Fong Beibei in front of him with a smile. The two of them murdered a lot of film again. Poplar Fruit, I finally met your daughter. Kiki is very cute and beautiful, but can you let her take off her sunglasses? She is so young and wearing sunglasses. Isn't it a bit pretentious? A female reporter with a Hong Kong accent squeezed over and asked. Finally, he saw the sharpness of the entertainment reporter's questions, but she was afraid that she picked the wrong target. Coming for Kiki? In front of Poplar Fruit? Are you sure? Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to asterisk. Chapter 1109. It had to be said that the question raised by the reporter with a rough accent was very sharp, and even the reporters around her couldn't help but make a commotion. How can you say that? Cheonjuan was angry, and he was about to question the reporter. However, before he could say anything, he was stopped by Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit, who had dealt with reporters several times, understood that he couldn't let Cheonjuan stand up for him at this time. Cheonjuan had just stepped into the entertainment industry, and his new movie was about to be released. It wouldn't be good if he was involved in a fight with reporters again. Poplar Fruit smiled slightly and said to the reporter, "I'm really sorry, the flash at the scene was too strong. I only wore sunglasses to protect Kiki's retina. Friends who understand medicine know that a child's retina is very fragile, and the flash can easily cause permanent damage. I won't say if this is everyone's consensus, but I believe that this is a request that all conscientious reporters shouldn't make." Although he was smiling and answering calmly, the sternness in Poplar Fruit's eyes could only be understood by the female reporter from Hong Kong. She was stunned, scared, and her body trembled. She even forgot how she escaped from this place. The unscrupulous reporter was quickly pushed away by others. A reporter from Sina Com came over and asked, "Poplar Fruit, on Sina Weibo, Han Han and you are both called the national father-in-law by netizens. Will today's meeting cause a conflict that we don't want to see?" This entertainment reporter's question was really strange, and the latter question was even more strange. Poplar Fruit shook his head with a smile and said, "How can it be? Thank you for everyone's love for Kiki. However, I think on the issue of the national father-in-law, I have the same opinion as director Han Han. Well, all the people who call themselves son-in-law will become our enemies." Poplar Fruit let go of Fong Beibei's hand, and his right hand made a funny gesture to show off his muscles. He smiled and said, "If you want to take my daughter away, you have to ask my fist first." Hee. This caused a burst of laughter. Everyone understood that Poplar Fruit was joking. However, this was obviously a good news source. He had even thought of the content. The nation's father-in-law wants to marry Kiki through a martial arts competition? Sure, let's fight. We'll talk about it after we win. Everyone knew that Poplar Fruit was a superhero who could take on 8 people at once. This challenge was extraordinarily difficult. A lot of people would probably give up after thinking about it. There might still be hope for them to pursue Han Xiaoya. Who would have thought that Poplar Fruit's words would be heard by Kiki? She hurriedly leaned over and hugged Poplar Fruit's fist. She anxiously shook her head and said, I don't want to Kiki. I don't want to be taken away by others." There was a burst of good-natured laughter in the reporters' area. Whether it was male or female reporters, when they saw Kiki's sad eyebrows and unhappy pouting mouth, they felt that the little girl's naivety and cuteness were cute. This scene was photographed by many reporters. This was probably the biggest gain of the premiere guests, right? Even if it was not included in the report on the new movie, there would be a small page for Kiki. There would definitely be many readers who would like this cute little girl. After answering this question, Poplar Fruit did not continue to be interviewed. He followed Chae-in-jeon to the front of the cinema. As a new director, Han Han would warmly welcome every guest who walked on the red carpet. As for Poplar Fruit, he showed great enthusiasm. When Han Han heard that Chae-in-jeon wanted to invite Poplar Fruit, he was ecstatic. Although Poplar Fruit's fame was not as famous as director Do, who would come in person later, rare things were precious. Poplar Fruit, who rarely appeared in public but did have millions of fans, would definitely be a good gimmick if he appeared at his press conference. Really, in order to promote the movie, Han Han also gave up his modesty as a scholar. In addition to the controversy caused by the actor deleting his Weibo, he also posted photos of the set from time to whet the fans' appetite. At today's premiere, he also carried the most eye-catching Madagascar in the movie, an Alaskan sled dog with compact facial features. Director, this is my good brother Poplar Fruit, and this is Han Han. You are all in the literary industry, so you should have a lot to talk about. Chae-in-jeon smiled and introduced them. Hello, Mr. Yang. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your support. Han Han warmly shook hands with Poplar Fruit. It's really an honor for a superhero to come to my movie premiere. The two did not have much interaction, but they belonged to the kind of young people who were very literary in their bones, especially Han Han. His works could be said to have influenced the generation of the 80s and 90s. You're welcome, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. We should be honored. Director Han Han may not know, but my girlfriend, Fong Beibei, and I are both your fans. Well, I grew up watching your works. Poplar Fruit pulled the shy Fong Beibei out. She blushed and said bravely, in addition to your books, I buy every issue of your magazine Solo Group. Today, I finally saw the real person. Can you give me an autograph? You don't have to be too harsh on Fong Beibei. She is also at the age of chasing stars, and don't underestimate Han Han's influence on girls of the same generation. Compared to big stars like Feng Xiaofeng, Chen Bolin and Chen Xiaoan, Han Han actually did not receive as much attention as them in the entertainment industry, and more voices of doubt. It was rare that at the movie premiere, a girl not only did not chase after a movie star, but also asked for his autograph as a fan of his books. Han Han was also a little flattered. Is that so? Han Han was stunned and smiled. Thank you for your support. It's not convenient now, but it's okay. After the premiere, I will ask my assistant to send it to you directly. Fong Beibei smiled with satisfaction. She shyly hid behind Poplar Fruit, letting Poplar Fruit and Han Han continue to chat. At this time, Kiki glanced at the meaty Madagascar next to her. Its black and white fur was as cute as a panda, and it immediately captured Kiki's soft heart. Almost forgetting her previous fear of the surrounding environment, Kiki asked her father to put her down, and then pulled her father to Madagascar's side without any explanation. This puppy, which was still a baby, was still young, but it was still very cute at times. It had a chubby face, a big nose, and the lively eyes under its dark eye sockets kept looking at Kiki, who was beside it. What a beautiful puppy! Kiki's eyes lit up, and she excitedly said to her father. She wanted to touch it like Goldie, but she was a little embarrassed to do it, because Madagascar was being led by Chen Xiaoan. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations, greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 11:10. The cute Madagascar made Kiki feel as if she had returned to the past, when she was still very young, but the memory was very clear. At that time, Goldie was also as petite as Little Motor. They drank milk together, crawled on the ground together, and then grew up together. Kiki stared at Little Motor's big round eyes in a trance. Little Motor also curiously looked at the little person with a nice smell in front of it. Its tongue stuck out half pink, so cute. Little girl, do you want to touch it? Chen Xiaoan, who was wearing a retro jacquard cheongsam, squatted down and gently smiled at Kiki and asked. Kiki, who was just immersed in the world of looking at Little Motor, was startled by Chen Xiaoan. She took a step back and hid half of her body behind Poplar Fruit. Timidly, she gathered a little courage and asked, Can I? Of course you can. Come, it's called Little Motor. What's your name? Chen Xiaoan's Taiwanese accent was not as strong as other Taiwanese celebrities, but the charm could still be heard. Thank you, my name is Kiki. Kiki unconsciously changed a little bit of Taiwanese accent. She politely bowed, and then let go of Poplar Fruit's hand. She squatted down and gently stroked Madagascar's little head. Kiki, such a nice name. Chen Xiaoan was worried that Little Motor would bite, so she looked at it from the side. However, Little Motor did not resist. Instead, under Kiki's touch, it squinted its eyes and looked very comfortable. I also have a daughter, a few years younger than her. Han Han came to Poplar Fruit's side and said with a smile. Today he did not bring his daughter. In fact, Han Han also rarely brought his daughter to appear in the public eye. Xiaoyi, right? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Just now a reporter asked me. But it seems that your daughter was also born in 2011, right? That's the same age as Kiki. Han Han asked in surprise. Is that so? Then your daughter must be really tall. If there's a chance, we can introduce them to each other. Generally speaking, with Han Han's aloof personality, he would not deliberately befriend someone, but Poplar Fruit was different. Poplar Fruit was a translation master that all authors wanted to work with. Han Han also hoped that her books could be sold overseas. Even though she did not have such plans for the next few years, it would not be a wrong choice to make friends with Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit's thoughts were simpler. He smiled and said, Okay. Kiki also liked to make new friends, especially those who were younger than her. If she can play with Xiaoyi, she will definitely be very happy. Xiaoyi was a few months younger than the Beckham's Little Seven. According to Kiki's care for her sister Little Seven, Kiki would also like her sister Xiaoyi. Of course, Poplar Fruit and the others stayed at the door for a long time. In order not to disturb Han Han's welcoming, Poplar Fruit carried Kiki and took Fong Beibei to bid farewell to Han Han and the others. He also had to enter the cinema to meet up with the rest of the group. Woo no, Kiki wants a small motor. Chi-Chi, who was reluctant to leave, pouted her little mouth and threw a tantrum after entering the cinema. Fong Beibei hugged her and coaxed her, but Chi-Chi's mood was not good. What small motor? Zheng Yujie heard, turned her head and asked curiously. No, she just saw the Alaskan Malamute and likes it. She wants to bring it home. Poplar Fruit did not know whether to laugh or cry. But how can that be? It's just a supporting role in the movie. You want to raise a dog? No problem, Kiki. After the movie, Auntie will buy one for you. You can choose any breed and size you want. Zheng Yujie held Kiki's little hand and said domineeringly. Really? Kiki wants a small motor. Immediately, Kiki's tears turned into laughter. She sniffed and said, Okay, when we go back to Yangcheng, Auntie will definitely find one that looks exactly like a small motor for you. Okay? Zheng Yujie asked. Chi-Chi nodded vigorously and wiped away her tears. She was beaming with joy. She had already begun to look forward to the happy days of having Little Motor. Sister Yujie. Fong Beibei anxiously whispered to Zheng Yujie. We already have a big dog at home. How can we raise another one? You don't know, Alaskan Malamutes will grow bigger than gold in the future. It's okay, I'll raise it. Zheng Yujie waved her hand and said indifferently, I'll raise it at home. When Kiki misses it, she'll come to see it. After a pause, Zheng Yujie's eyes drifted to Poplar Fruit, then turned back abruptly. The movie theater was very dark, so Fong Beibei couldn't see this scene. She faintly sighed and said softly, It's not a bad idea to raise one. It's lonely at home, and it can be a companion. Ha! Sister Yujie, what did you say? Fong Beibei didn't hear clearly. Nothing. Zheng Yujie waved her hand and elegantly turned her head. It's settled then. Poplar Fruit shook Fong Beibei's hand and said to her with a smile, It's okay, we'll discuss it when we get back. Maybe Kiki's enthusiasm is just a temporary thing? If it really doesn't work, we'll see if there are any suitable ones in your rescue center and adopt one. It's also a contribution. The premiere was always inseparable from some small activities and media Q&A. Director Han Han's connections were quite good. He actually got the support of director Du from Harbor City in person, and also got the VCR blessings from directors Dongsheng and Sui Hark. This could be considered a moderate surprise. But whether the movie was successful or not had nothing to do with how many people supported it. In the end, it still depended on the quality of the movie. The movie began. At the beginning, 3 young people who had lost their hometown were going to leave the island and go on a road journey across the mainland. There were a lot of laughs. At the beginning, there was a scene where they burned down the house to cut off their escape route, but accidentally blew up the house of their childhood sweetheart. The story was a bit ridiculous. Not long after it started, in a hotel, they lost their companion who shung because of a prostitute, and missed the girl, leaving only the 2 of them to continue their journey from east to west. The movie was very complicated, a bit like a mixture of many stories, but in the chaos, there seemed to be a line that connected them. Cities, small towns, mountains, jungles, and even deserts. They kept meeting and saying goodbye to each other as they continued this complicated journey. What kind of profound thought was Han Han trying to express? Poplar Fruit was watching and thinking, but not long after, he decided not to waste his time thinking. Instead, like Fong Beibei, he followed the story's development and the movie's burden from time to cry and laugh. Feng Xiaofeng and Chen Bolin's performances were very outstanding. They portrayed the maverick but failed strongman and the kind and pure but decadent Wenqing Jianghe. The other supporting roles in this movie couldn't leave such a deep impression on the audience. Let's not talk about the guest roles. Baiku and Teacher Kong's roles were more high-end side characters, so they were limited by their acting skills. They only had a few minutes of screen time, so it felt like they only showed their faces, but they did not leave much of an impression. Chen Xiaoan played the role of Zhou Mo, Wang Luodan played the role of Su Mi, and Yuan Quan played the role of Lu Yingying. These 3 female characters actually had different personalities, but they all had an indescribable charm and were memorable in their sadness. However, they were ultimately just supporting roles that passed by and missed out on, and they had too little screen time. Only Che Enjuan's Alu was the only shining point other than the 2 main characters. Alu was a man like a mystery, a knight who rode a motorcycle around the world. He was a man who was deeply in love with his wife. He was a man with an ideal like Voyager 1. Alu deceived the main characters and even the audience. But just as everyone was moved by his deeds, he suddenly stole the strong man's car and made a big reversal. However, even with this big turn of events, everyone was still unsure about the answer to one question. Was what Alu said about his wife and the pursuit of Voyager 1 true? From another point of view, wasn't Che Enjuan's performance also vivid? 2 hours later, the movie came to an end with Pu Shu's faint sad voice. The song Ordinary Road was very appropriate. Although it had been announced on the internet a few days ago, it still made people sigh at the end of the movie. Fong Beibei's tear ducts were shallow. When she saw the ending, she had already shed tears, so Poplar Fruit was taking care of her instead of standing up and applauding. Poplar Fruit knew why she was so sad. But when you say goodbye to someone, you still have to use a little strength. Because if you say one more sentence, it might be your last sentence. If you look at them one more time, it might be your last time. This sentence was not necessarily used between friends. It could also be used for love. Silly. Poplar Fruit hugged Fong Beibei's body and let her lean on his chest. Then he held her hand and said, "We will be together forever. We will never say goodbye." After the movie ended, Poplar Fruit congratulated Che Enjuan and left with his girlfriend and child, because the main characters here were Han Han and Che Enjuan. However, there was a little girl who was still thinking about little Motor. Motor is very cute. Kiki likes its compact facial features. Well, it can play dead. Haha. Gold doesn't even know how to play. Chi-Chi, did you notice that Motor has grown bigger? He's so fat and big now. When it grows up, you won't think it's cute anymore. No. Motor is very cute when it grows up. It's as cute as a panda. If you like Motor, then Gold will be very sad. No way, no way. Kiki also likes Gold very much. Kiki likes Gold and Motor at the same time. Moreover, if Gold has Motor as its friend, it will be very happy. Just like Kiki has little sister Xiaoqi and brother Xiaofeng. The night wind in the capital was a little cold. It blew the little girl's light voice, which floated far in the air, looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Chapter 11:11. Kiki wanted to raise an Alaskan Malamute like Little Motor, and Zheng Yujie helped her fulfill her wish. However, the Alaskan Malamute that was fostered in Zheng Yujie's house could no longer be called Little Motor. It was an adult Big Motor. Because it grew too big, it was abandoned by its owner like many other pets. Big Motor was rescued by the rescue center at the end of last year from a landfill station. At that time, it had lost all of its fur and was as skinny as firewood. It was not even as heavy as an adult Chinese field dog, and it even had a very ugly skin disease. That was the first time the rescue center had seen an Alaskan Malamute, and they had always registered it as a husky. In fact, adult Alaskan Malamutes did indeed look like huskies. It was only when Fong Beibei took over the rescue center and arranged for the professional veterinarians at the pet hospital to categorize all of the stray cats and dogs for management that the veterinarians gave it a proper name. After 3 months of treatment and care at the rescue center, Big Motor returned to its normal size. However, a large adult dog like Big Motor had a terrifying appetite. If Fong Beibei hadn't taken over the rescue center and had sufficient funds to back it up, according to the standards of the previous rescue centers, Big Motor probably wouldn't have been able to eat until it was half full, and it wouldn't have looked as beautiful as it did now. Regardless, after returning to Yangcheng, after everyone discussed it, they went to Fong Beibei's pet hospital to look for information, and found the only Alaskan Malamute in the rescue center. Kiki liked Big Motor at first sight and didn't mention anything about raising Little Motor. Therefore, Zheng Yujie became the first customer of the pet hospital to adopt a stray dog since the establishment of the pet hospital. Yes, because they didn't understand. Too many people had a serious prejudice against stray cats and dogs. They felt that stray cats and dogs carried germs, and they were more willing to pay for healthy pets. Isn't that simple? Zheng Yujie gave a few suggestions. First, find someone to write a few articles, mainly to highlight the health of the stray cats and dogs after the treatment at the rescue center, and the kindness of the people who adopted them. Then spread it on Weibo and WeChat, and everyone will understand after reading it. Zheng Yujie said that there were still experts in writing articles in the publishing company, and she could ask for help if she needed anything. Second, isn't the purpose of your pet hospital to do better public welfare? Zheng Yujie said. If that's the case, then do it more thoroughly. You can do a free physical examination for the adopted stray cats and dogs and cats, and even waive the medical fees. Her suggestion finally helped Fong Beibei draw the final blueprint of the pet hospital. Then the website's website, and Fong Beibei. Not only to categorize the stray cats and dogs, but also allow people to click on clicks to know more about the status of the stray cats and dogs and cats to pet to be, not only to categorize the categories, but also, and clicks to make it so that people could click on click ants. And, if possible, they could further develop a WeChat public account to make it smarter and more convenient for the target customers to find the pets they wanted to adopt. Zheng Yujie's suggestion was very good. After her analysis, Fong Beibei quickly found a breakthrough between the pet hospital and the rescue center. Especially the articles, because Fong Beibei used real photos and cases. Once published, it touched countless netizens and was forwarded tens of millions of times, thanks to some internet celebrities. And the last sentence, if you love, please love deeply. If you raise, please adopt. Fong Beibei mainly urged people to cherish their pets, and not abandon them. It improved the situation of pet abandonment from the source, and to a certain extent, strengthened the hearts of many families who wanted to adopt pets. Although adoption was not so popular that the demand could not meet the demand, Fong Beibei's public welfare project was finally on the right track. More and more poor dogs would find families who would care for them until they were old. Of course, this was all in the future. Zheng Yujie adopted Big Motor home. Although it was mainly for Kiki, Big Motor still made a lot of changes in her life. In the past, she would devote most of her time to work, and her personal space would be severely compressed because of the major events and chores of the publishing house. With Big Motor, Zheng Yujie's work schedule became more regular. Except for some meetings and busy projects that couldn't be changed, she handed over all the trivial matters in the publishing house to her assistant. Every day, she would make time to walk Big Motor. Alaskan Malamute was a docile dog that did not like to bark very much. Compared to the husky that looked very similar to it, it was more honest and steady, while the latter was super neurotic. Its personality is very similar to yours. It cares about its family, is considerate, and doesn't bark. When you are tired, you can even lean on it. One day, Poplar Fruit came to see Big Motor with Kiki. Zheng Yujie sat on the side and chatted with Poplar Fruit. She spoke softly like an artistic youth reading poetry. On the other side, Kiki was happily rolling around on Big Motor. Compared to Kiki, who liked to play with gold, Big Motor was like an older brother than Kiki. It turned its head and looked at her meekly, letting Kiki use it as a sofa. Poplar Fruit knew that Zheng Yujie's words had a hidden meaning, but he could only smile bitterly. This is also good. When I come home, I have a companion. When I miss you, I can look at Big Motor. I am satisfied. Zheng Yujie continued to say. Looking at Big Motor's eyes, what was reflected was Poplar Fruit's figure. I am not a dog. Poplar Fruit scratched his head. You are worse than a dog. Zheng Yujie softly snorted and said with sarcasm. Do you think I really don't care in front of you? I miss you so much that I want you to come out and accompany me, but you refuse to come out. Fortunately, there is Big Motor. When I hide in the quilt and cry, it knows to come over and pat my shoulder. Poplar Fruit was silent. He also felt uncomfortable listening to it. But as he said before, love is never fair, and it is impossible to divide it into two halves. If you choose one, you are bound to hurt the other. Fortunately, Zheng Yujie only complained intermittently. After a while, she changed the topic and asked Poplar Fruit to cook a meal for her. You didn't buy any vegetables? Poplar Fruit wanted to say, why don't we go out to eat? There are some in the fridge. I asked the nanny to buy them. Zheng Yujie pouted her lips, hinting him. But I still have to go home to eat later. Poplar Fruit scratched his head. It's okay. I just want you to watch me finish eating before you leave. Zheng Yujie said in a firm tone. Poplar Fruit looked at Kiki, who was still playing with Big Motor, and had no intention of going home. Thinking about the guilt in his heart, he stood up and walked to the kitchen. Zheng Yujie also stood up, but did not go in. She just leaned against the door and looked at him. Poplar Fruit composed himself, and began to think about what kind of beautiful and delicious dishes to make for Zheng Yujie. Consider it as making up for it. Poplar Fruit thought. And why does it feel like something is wrong? Forget it, if something is wrong, then something is wrong. It's not an excessive request, right? Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to asterisk. Chapter 11-12. In the middle of August, Poplar Fruit's cooperation with the student union representatives from various universities came to an end. There was still half a month before school started. Poplar Fruit welcomed a rare short holiday. If it was according to the previous arrangements, Poplar Fruit would take Kiki on a trip during the summer vacation. However, it seemed that there was no time now. Plus, he had not been home for half a year. His parents were always saying that they missed their granddaughter. Therefore, Poplar Fruit decided to take Kiki back to his hometown. Fong Bebe did not participate in any competitions this year. Therefore, she had plenty of time and would go back with them. Speaking of which, time flies. In the blink of an eye, Fong Bebe was almost in her 4th year of university. When Poplar Fruit first met her, Fong Bebe was not in university yet. Their love had already lasted for 2 years. Many students who were about to enter their 4th year of university would have to face life choices again. For example, Poplar Fruit was busy applying for jobs for the whole year. Every day, he would be as tired as a dog when he came back. He would look at the empty 3-party agreement and feel anxious. However, Fong Bebe did not need to go through such a difficult journey. She had won 2 special prizes in the American Mathematical Modeling Competition and participated in the research projects of academicians. Such qualifications were enough to guarantee that Fong Bebe would be qualified for postgraduate studies. Moreover, if Fang Beibei was willing to spend some time tutoring in English, she could even get into a famous foreign university. At the very least, the two best universities in Beijing would be willing to give her a place in postgraduate studies. However, Fang Beibei and Poplar Fruit were the same. They both chose to stay in their alma mater and stayed in Guangdong province. Maybe I can have a better development in other schools. But didn't you say that? As long as it's real gold, it will shine when we put it there. Fang Beibei told Poplar Fruit when she made the decision. Last year, around this time, Poplar Fruit and Li Zichao had an ultimate competition. As a result, he saved the innocent Duan Xueqing. And the man who loved the Duan Xueqing wrongly, Pai Dinwan, risked his own life to kill Li Zichao. It was also because of that incident that Poplar Fruit's life returned to normal. He no longer needed to be on guard against any schemes that popped up out of nowhere. Of course, the Li family would not let this matter rest. It was Zheng Mingsheng and He Jioming who bore the brunt of the Li family's anger. Perhaps if Li Zichao had not appeared, Duan Xueqing would not have become a little crazy because of Pai Dinwan's death. Although she was not really sick, Poplar Fruit had visited her, and she still had not recovered from that incident. However, if Li Zichao had not been there, would Pai Dinwan have appeared? Perhaps he would? If they were destined to be tied together in this life. Even if there had not been that accident, perhaps they would have met on the street. The man was high, the woman was indifferent. But the man would continue to chase after her. Perhaps because of a cup of hot tea. The iceberg would melt. Without Li Zichao, there would not have been the first and second periods of pain. Duan Xueqing would be happier, right? Poplar Fruit stood by the window and held his phone for a long time, but he still did not make the call. He suddenly understood that Duan Xueqing would not care about the news. She would not be happy or sad because of the Li family. She probably only cared about one person in her heart, a person who would not come back. Although he was moved by the relationship between Duan Xueqing and Pai Dinwan, Poplar Fruit really hoped that Duan Xueqing could let go of the past and welcome a new relationship. This might be difficult, but Poplar Fruit hoped that in the future, he would see. After the sadness, Poplar Fruit suddenly received a call from Beijing. It was not a bad thing, nor was it a happy event. It was a happy event that really made Poplar Fruit cheer. The call was from Professor Yuan Xinlin from Beijing University. After only 2 months, Poplar Fruit's completely perfected word-splitting method passed the clinical test of the Education Department and the Confucius Institute. Whether it was new primary school children or new foreign students recruited by the Confucius Institute, the word-splitting method greatly reduced the difficulty of Chinese education. These tests were not easy. The country had invested a lot of money in them. That was why the results were out in 2 months. There were more than 3,000 foreigners in more than 30 countries around the world who participated in the test. After 2 months of Chinese learning, more than 2,100 foreigners passed the HSK Level 3 exam. The HSK was also called the Chinese Proficiency Test. Those who passed the Level 3 exam could basically complete daily conversations in Chinese. They could even deal with most of the people who came to China to travel. Compared to the past, the HSK Level 3 exam was for examinees who had taken Chinese classes for a year and a half, 2 to 3 classes a week. However, more than 2,000 students who passed the Level 3 exam only took 2 months. Professor Yuan Xinlin told Poplar Fruit that although the results were not unexpected, the comments of the examinees such as "It's so easy," "I'm in love with Chinese," "I'll continue to study in the future," etc., still made the Chinese research team's professors ecstatic. Poplar Fruit, are you ready? Professor Yuan Xinlin asked with a smile. Ready for what? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. Professor Yuan Xinlin did not answer this question directly. Instead, he said, in September, 475 Confucius Institutes and 851 Confucius classrooms around the world will undergo a comprehensive reform. All teaching materials will be replaced with teaching materials based on the theory of the word-splitting method. Poplar Fruit, are you mentally prepared for the word-splitting method you invented to be tested by people all over the world? Professor Yuan Xinlin asked seriously. Poplar Fruit's expression turned serious. He said seriously, I'm ready. Success, that is the success of the Chinese nation. Failure, or lack thereof, I will work harder to improve. Perhaps, the Chinese language would also be able to say goodbye to the past and usher in a new future. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to asterisk. Chapter 11:13. What are you looking at? Kiki. Feng Beibei leaned over and looked at the scenery outside the window with Kiki. There were fields with all kinds of fruits and vegetables in the southern land. In the distance, there were short but green mountains. The trees that protected the road flashed in front of their eyes. It was like a movie, showing the beautiful scenery of nature and the mountain village in front of them. Kiki misses Grandpa and Grandma, Kiki said in a melancholy voice, and Brother Jia and Fu. Since Poplar Fruit said that he would take her home, Kiki's homesickness surged. No one knew why her little head was filled with the sadness that only adults would have. Aren't we going home to visit them now? Feng Beibei helped Kiki tidy up her messy long hair and said gently to her, in a while we will go back to our hometown and see Grandpa and Grandma. Ma, do you think Fu will welcome Goldie home? Kiki turned her head and asked. Goldie, who was lying on its stomach in the third row, raised its head and looked at its little master in confusion. It was very happy when it got in the car, because it hadn't traveled with its masters for a long time. It wriggled excitedly for a few hours and only took a break now. Of course, Feng Beibei said with a smile. Goldie and Fu are as kind as Kiki. They will definitely like each other. How can they not welcome each other? At this time, Poplar Fruit, who was concentrating on driving, said, We are almost at the county town. Really? Kiki's mood suddenly rose. She turned her head and looked out of the window with her big shining eyes. The Land Rover passed the toll station, and Poplar Fruit began to drive off the highway to the county town. After making a turn in the county town, they could turn into the county road back to the village. What is this? Poplar Fruit was dumbfounded as he looked at the newly built cultural square in front of him. There was a large group of people standing there. Most of them were onlookers, but there were some officials in suits standing in front of them. More importantly, they were holding large banners. It said, Welcome back to your hometown, Poplar Fruit, the hero of the people. What the hell was he doing? Poplar Fruit almost drove the car into an electric pole. He stopped the car and looked outside with a frown. Then he told Feng Beibei and the others to stay in the car. He opened the door and got out. Poplar Fruit can't refuse. The leader of the party is Yang Rong, and there are a lot of leaders behind him. Poplar Fruit must respect them. She didn't know how they found out about her return. Perhaps it was her family who spread the news. However, it seemed that her family was kept in the dark. Otherwise, her sister and brother-in-law would have told her about it. Welcome. Poplar Fruit, I'm looking forward to seeing your hometown. Yang Rong came over with a smile and said to Poplar Fruit. He took a bouquet of flowers from a primary school student next to him and handed it to Poplar Fruit. Immediately, a lot of people who looked like reporters ran over and took photos of them with their cameras. Secretary Yang, what are you doing? Poplar Fruit frowned and shook his head. He asked with a wry smile. I'm not a big shot. Why are you making such a big scene? Of course, I have to welcome you grandly. Yang Rong didn't seem to hear the dissatisfaction in Poplar Fruit's words. He laughed and said, You don't know how proud we are of you after you become the hero of the people? Poplar Fruit looked around. However, there was no pride or joy like Yang Rong said. It was just the behavior of the group of officials in front of him. The onlookers were more curious and confused. It had been 5 months since Kuan Ming's incident in March. It was enough for his name to fade from people's memories. This was also the reason why Poplar Fruit had been keeping a low profile. The media rarely mentioned him. But why did Yang Rong make such a big scene? Poplar Fruit seemed to have understood something. He went to talk to his family about the changes in his hometown. Yang Rong told Poplar Fruit that his hometown hadn't changed much. Yang Rong's new road not only didn't become a dragon that drove the county's economy to take off, but it was gradually abandoned because not many businesses moved in. He built the county's cultural square to completely change the appearance of the county and attract more tourists. However, he didn't succeed. Instead, it became a good place for aunties to do square dancing at night. However, Yang Rong saw it one day and arranged for the police and urban management to drive the aunties out. He said that it would affect the city's appearance and made the people complain. Yang Rong had been in charge of the county for more than a year. He had been anxious to make political achievements, but his political ideas were not practical. He tried to use real estate and tourism as a breakthrough. Unfortunately, the spending power of the county was limited. Most people couldn't afford and didn't need to buy more houses for investment. Therefore, most of the county's financial expenses were thrown into the water. They didn't really implement it and didn't really benefit the people. Not only in the county, but also in the higher-ups, doubts about Yang Rong gradually increased. Yang Rong's state of mind became more and more anxious. The more anxious he was, the more impatient he was to do some practical things honestly. Instead, he was thinking all day long about finding another way to do something evil. Now there was something wrapped in a red cloth in the middle of the square. It was surrounded by lanterns and decorations, making it very conspicuous. All of this made Poplar Fruit feel a little uneasy. Haha, Poplar Fruit, you also see this, right? Yang Rong stepped forward and affectionately held Yang Guo's hand. Without any explanation, he led him to the other side, showing that they were good brothers. However, Yang Guo's brows were tightly knitted. He could only helplessly follow along. Several cameras of the county's television station had been filming from all directions. They even made some movements to record the program. Today, our people's hero returns to his hometown. It is also the day of the completion of our county's first people's hero sculpture. It is a joyous day for the people of our county. A stage was set up in front of the big red cloth. A host was standing on it and speaking loudly. Wait! Poplar Fruit stopped. He didn't want to go on the stage again. He looked at Yang Rong angrily. Secretary Yang, what are you doing? Poplar Fruit, how can you say this is a joke? Yang Rong laughed and said, this is your hometown's recognition of your contributions. Poplar Fruit's face darkened. He looked at the large stone tablet in front of the red cloth. It was engraved with his battle record of stopping 8 terrorist thugs at Kunming train station. It was obvious what the 2-story tall sculpture covered by the red cloth behind it was. Secretary Yang, I'm sorry. Please forgive me for not recognizing your approach. Poplar Fruit finally couldn't help but shake off Yang Rong's hand. He said loudly, I don't think I've done anything worthy of my hometown's people to build a sculpture for me. And I believe that this sculpture doesn't represent the wishes of my hometown's people. What you're doing is a waste of money and manpower. Yang Guo shouted these words in a powerful and resonant voice. Then, under the dumbfounded gaze of the group of officials, he turned around and left. Poplar Fruit drove away, leaving behind a gloomy Yang Rong. The reporters and the television station looked at each other in dismay. He left behind the crowd that was laughing and even cheering loudly. He left behind the red cloth that was so bright that it made people feel that it was ironic. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Chapter 11-14. Poplar Fruit left Yang Rong, the county head, in the cultural square under the watchful eyes of the public. As for what happened after that, Poplar Fruit did not know. He had already brought Fang Beibei and Kiki home. Returning to her hometown, Kiki was naturally overjoyed. As soon as she got out of the car, her pleasant cries of Grandpa and Grandma spread throughout the courtyard. Kiki, who had a sweet mouth, made the wrinkles on Yang Tai and Su Jinfeng's faces bloom. In the past 2 years, the family was willing to spend money. After many renovations, the courtyard was not as dirty as the other houses in the village. Instead, it was orderly and tidy, like a small garden. As soon as Gold got out of the car, a few chubby yellow puppies came out of the small garden. They dared to surround it and even barked, as if they had learned to protect their home since they were young. Woof! Fu, who had already become a dog mother, rushed back from Poplar Fruit's side and stared at the uninvited guest, Gold. However, Gold was very friendly. It walked around with Fu, and the 2 dogs sniffed each other's scent. Fu, Gold, you 2 have to be good friends, Kiki said without raising her head. She broke free from her grandparents' side and happily pounced on the 3 puppies. She was in a really good mood. They were born at the beginning of this month. Young Tai explained to Poplar Fruit with a smile. I gave birth to 5. I gave one to the 3rd uncle in the village, and the kid next door also took one away because he liked it. Poplar Fruit smiled, but he was still worried in his heart. Looking at this, could it be that he wants to take 2 more home? Kiki was temporarily put aside. Not long after Poplar Fruit came back, Yang Chongguan arrived with Yang Ping and Yang Linjie in his car. This summer vacation, the family's factory had selected the best employees and sent them to Nanhu province for a holiday at the company's expense. Yang Chongguan had just returned not long ago. These days, Yang Linjie had been playing with his grandparents. Haha, Poplar Fruit, I heard that you embarrassed Yang Rong at the square? Yang Chongguan asked happily. Brother-in-law, you know? Poplar Fruit looked up at him and asked. Speaking of this, Poplar Fruit was unhappy. Of course I know. How big is our county town? My friend will call me right away. Yang Chongguan laughed. Poplar Fruit frowned and asked. So you knew about this statue from the beginning? Yang Chongguan waved his hand and said. No, I don't know. Why wouldn't I tell you if I knew? Su Jinfeng and Feng Beibei came over. After she understood what Poplar Fruit and the others were discussing, she raised her eyebrows and snorted. I was wondering what was going on. So it was about the statue. Last month, someone came to me to discuss this matter and said that he wanted me to pay for it. Ah, Mom, you knew about this? Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. Then you paid for it. Why didn't you discuss it with me? Why would I pay for it? Su Jinfeng said angrily. You silly child. Why don't you think about it? He's not dead yet. Why would he put up a statue? I scolded the person who came. Yang Chongguan nodded thoughtfully and said. Then he might have asked other entrepreneurs in the county to sponsor the money. In my opinion, brother, you were too reckless. He's an official. You shouldn't have attacked him in public. Regarding this matter, Yang Ping had a different opinion. She said worriedly. Sister. Feng Beibei came over and held Yang Ping's hand. She said in Mandarin, Poplar Fruit didn't do anything wrong. If he didn't choose to refuse, there might be more people scolding him on the internet. Because she was determined to learn Poplar Fruit's dialect, although Feng Beibei still couldn't speak it well, there was no problem with her hearing. Poplar Fruit's wife is right. Yang Chongguan laughed and pointed at Yang Ping. You're too narrow-minded. With our family's Poplar Fruit status, do we still need to accommodate a small county official? Our brother has seen the country's leaders before. It's not because I'm not afraid of him. It's because I'm reasonable in this matter. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said slowly. What is Yang Rong planning? He just wants to hype up my matter in exchange for political achievements. If he wants me to help promote my hometown and bring tangible benefits to the people in my hometown, I'm still willing. But he doesn't. First of all, whether it's financial or entrepreneurial money, he's wasting the people's money by erecting this statue. Then you might not know, but the cultural square is so small. As a result, a statue of me is erected there. It's not convenient for any activities to be held in the cultural square in the future. Isn't this harming the people's interests? Poplar Fruit said. Yes, erecting a statue of me sounds like a great move. In the future, all the tourists who come to or pass by our county will know my name, Poplar Fruit. But is this going to be immortalized forever? Poplar Fruit asked. No, I'm afraid it'll only be infamy. Poplar Fruit laughed. Because I've become an accomplice in Yang Rong's project to build political achievements. Feng Beibei nodded and said, yes, we can't accept it. On this issue, Feng Beibei stood closely with Poplar Fruit. But brother, he's the secretary of the county. Yang Ping muttered worriedly. Although Yang Rong was unpopular in the county, he was still the head of the county. He had jurisdiction over the entire county, including all the Yang family's businesses. Poplar Fruit and Yang Rong had a bad relationship. The first thing that would be affected was the operation of their family's business and factory. As long as Yang Rong gave a few administrative orders to stop work for safety rectification, their business would be in trouble. Yang Chongguan said. What's there to be afraid of? Poplar Fruit has met the #1 leader. You tell the #1 leader to let the Commission for Discipline Inspection investigate Yang Rong. I guarantee that he'll be in trouble. Poplar fruit, let me tell you, Yang Rong's ass is definitely not clean. Who knows how much money he embezzled to build roads and plazas? You're stupid. Do you think the #1 leader is someone you can meet whenever you want? Yang Ping slapped Yang Chongguan and said, he's so busy every day. How would he have the time to deal with the trivial matters of us commoners? If only Secretary Chen was in the city. Yang Ping sighed and said, Secretary Chen definitely wouldn't let Yang Rong do whatever he wanted. Why did she mention Chen Longjiang? Chen Longjiang was already a thing of the past. He was doing well in Guishan province, but he couldn't come back and intervene in Guangdong province's political affairs. All right. Don't you still have me? I've been in Yangqing for so many years. It's not like I don't know a few people. Poplar fruit said with a smile. We'll deal with it when the time comes. If we really go against Yang Rong, I'm not necessarily afraid of him. Besides, even if the business is gone, it's not like I don't have money to support you. With money, we can still make a comeback, right? Poplar fruit said with a smile. I forgot that you're already a billionaire. Yang Ping laughed. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 11:15. If nothing happened to Yang Rong, Poplar Fruit wouldn't want to make things difficult for a county party secretary. Although he knew a lot of powerful people, not to mention Zheng Yujie's father, Zheng Mingsheng, and not to mention the promise that the #1 leader had made to him back then, he could casually hire a department-level cadre like Uncle Jean. One word from him would be enough to make Yang Rong suffer. However, Poplar Fruit didn't like to cause trouble. If people didn't offend him, he wouldn't offend them. He would just be an ordinary person who worked hard for his academic career. However, he still underestimated Yang Rong's shamelessness. In the evening, the family happily finished dinner and chatted in the living room. The news of Yang Rong unveiling the statue in the square was broadcasted on TV. Poplar Fruit completely lost interest in chatting. Yang Rong was so thick-skinned. Poplar Fruit had already turned against him and left, but he still wanted to continue the event. But thinking about it, it made sense. He had spent millions on a statue. If he didn't continue, he couldn't drag the statue back to his home, right? What shocked Poplar Fruit's family was that Yang Rong even asked the TV station to edit the video. They spliced the video of Poplar Fruit getting out of the car to pick up the flowers and being led to the statue, and Yang Rong pulling down the red cloth under the guidance of the host. The video of Poplar Fruit leaving angrily and Yang Rong's gloomy face under the crowd's jeering disappeared. Instead, because of this splicing, it seemed that Poplar Fruit had participated in and supported the completion of the statue. Wasn't Yang Rong afraid that someone would take a video and upload it to the internet to expose him? Oh, Yang Rong asked the police to force everyone to delete the video on the spot. What a clever move. In an instant, he pulled Poplar Fruit to the front and made Poplar Fruit face all the doubts of public opinion. It wasn't over yet. Poplar Fruit could still sit still when he saw the news of the statue unveiling, but when he saw the video quoted below, Poplar Fruit jumped out of his seat. It's not a coincidence that Mr. Yanggua became a superhero in the hearts of the people. In his hometown, Mr. Yanggua has always been kind and willing to help others. In November 2011, there was a robbery at XX Bank by masked robbers armed with guns. Coincidentally, Mr. Yanggua, who was there at the time, fought with his bare hands against 3 masked robbers armed with guns to protect the safety of the people's property. How dare he bring this up? Poplar Fruit was shocked and furious. From the surveillance footage, we can see that the gun-wielding masked robber injured a civilian and attempted to rape and injure a female student at the scene. It was Yanggua and an active-duty military officer who acted together. Poplar Fruit couldn't stand it anymore. He went up and turned off the TV. Kiki and Yang Lingjie had already eaten and gone outside to play, not because they were worried that the children would see it. So that's how it is. I was wondering why Yang Rong dared to continue to put up this statue. It turns out that he found a previous case to back up his actions. Yang Chongguan sighed. With this surveillance video, I'm afraid that others won't pursue him for a while. Yang Rong did think so. Wasn't the news of Poplar Fruit's superhero no longer new? He would add fuel to the fire and let people see even more explosive evidence. Robbers with guns. Poplar Fruit dared to fight with them just to save a female student. Such a heroic incident would probably only be seen in American blockbusters, right? But it really happened around us. Young Rong wanted the national media to hype up Poplar Fruit's heroic performance again. He wanted everyone to recognize Poplar Fruit's title as a hero. Then, not only would his act of erecting a statue for Poplar Fruit not be questioned, but it would also earn him more attention and fame. In order to thank Poplar Fruit for his contributions, the people of his hometown naturally erected a small statue for him. What's wrong with that? And our county is the cradle of superheroes. Think about Batman's Gotham City. If this news were to spread, wouldn't many fans of Poplar Fruit from all over the country come to pay homage to the statue of Poplar Fruit, the superhero? Young Rong really had a good plan. It turned out that this surveillance video was his trump card. What do you know? Poplar Fruit roared at Yang Chongguan, who was amazed by this method. It was the first time he was so angry. Why did Secretary Chun Mi and Big Brother he suppress this case? Do you know? Poplar Fruit's anger shocked everyone. Feng Beibei quickly went up and hugged Poplar Fruit's arm. Only then did she calm down the raging Poplar Fruit and drag him back to his seat. Let's talk nicely. Don't fight. Su Jinfeng, who was taking care of her grandchildren in the courtyard, heard the commotion and came back to say. Young Ping waved her hand and told her that it was nothing. They didn't want the old lady to worry. Because of Feng Beibei's soft persuasion, Poplar Fruit's emotions calmed down a little. He said in a low voice, "Sorry, I shouldn't be angry at you." "It's okay. Your question just now, wasn't it because my daughter is Secretary Chen's daughter?" Yang Chongguan asked in confusion. Poplar Fruit shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "No, if it was only because of this, there was no need to suppress the case and hide it. Wouldn't it be fine if the news didn't report the girl's situation? In fact, this case didn't go through our county's police. It was directly taken over by the provincial department." Poplar Fruit asked, "Do you know why?" "Why? Was it armed robbery?" Feng Beibei asked. She hadn't heard Poplar Fruit talk about this in detail. She only knew that Poplar Fruit had saved Chen Longjiang's daughter, so the two families had a close relationship. She only knew about the dangerous situation of armed robbers after watching the news. It was because this group of people had done several major cases of drug trafficking and murder across the border. They had dozens of lives in their hands, including the police. The robbery in our county was their last resort before they escaped, Poplar Fruit said solemnly. He had always known about it, but he didn't say it because he didn't want his family to worry. None of the 3 robbers who came in at that time ran away. 1 was dead and 2 were injured. Of course, the injured one was later sentenced to death and shot. Poplar Fruit didn't say it out loud, but he said, later on, the investigation found that there was another robber outside. Until now, we still haven't caught him, Poplar Fruit said solemnly. There's information that shows that he has secretly escaped to a foreign country. At that time, I remember that they were speaking Thai, but the police and the Thai police couldn't find him. It's very likely that he has changed his name and is hiding somewhere. I understand now. Back then, this case was covered up to protect us. Yang Chongguan had been in the army, so his reaction was faster. He immediately said, I'm worried that the person who escaped will come back for revenge. Poplar Fruit was silent for a while, then nodded solemnly. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to. Chapter 11:16. In his hometown, Poplar Fruit had been on tenterhooks for half a month. However, on the surface, it seemed to be peaceful, and he did not encounter any of his old enemies. Even before leaving his hometown, Poplar Fruit drove around the county, and even with his sensitive sixth sense, he did not feel any danger. Perhaps it was a false alarm? After 3 years, those gangsters had probably forgotten their old hatred. Perhaps they had already been captured by foreign warlords and killed in the mountains. Therefore, after the bodyguards arrived, Poplar Fruit said goodbye to his parents and left his hometown with Feng Beibei and Kiki. Yang Rong, who probably did not know who he had offended until his death, received the punishment he deserved. He had embezzled more than 10 million yuan, which was enough for him to spend the rest of his life in prison. Poplar Fruit did not add insult to injury. In his eyes, Yang Rong was not an enemy. He was just a rat *T that ruined a pot of porridge. He did not need to spend any more effort to get rid of him. The night before returning home, Kiki was reluctant to part with Afu's puppies. She could not sleep the whole night, and kept talking to Poplar Fruit about bringing the puppies home. They could no longer keep pets at home. If they asked, Feng Bei still had a pet hospital as their base. Wouldn't Kiki have to bring the cats and puppies home every day? In the end, Feng Bei carried Kiki outside to look at the stars and talk to her. Feng Bei knew that Poplar Fruit was nervous these days, so he did not have the patience to persuade Kiki. Kiki, why do you want to bring Huang and the puppies home so much? Feng Bei asked gently. Because Huang is super cute. Kiki likes Huang, and Huang also likes to play with Kiki. Kiki pouted, playing with her fingers, and said unhappily. Poplar Fruit's tough attitude just now made Kiki feel very uncomfortable. But Goldie is still young. Feng Bei thought for a moment and said, they're still young and don't know how to live independently. It's hard for us to take care of them. Even Gold is small. Kiki pouted. She was not so easily fooled. She said, in the past, Goldie grew up with Kiki. Kiki has seen Papa's photo. He's as big as little Huang. Feng Bei said, but Chi-Chi, have you thought about it? Little Huang and the others are still so young. If we let them leave Fu and their mother, and then they can't see each other for a long time, won't little Huang be very sad? Kiki was stunned. She raised her head and looked at Feng Bei with her big eyes. Her eyes reflected the bright stars in the sky. There's also Afu. Her child has been taken away, leaving her all alone. Will she be upset? Will she look very pitiful? Feng Bei asked softly. She held Kiki's little face and gently stroked it. Don't say any more. Kiki's eyes gradually became misty, and then she said with tears in her eyes, Kiki doesn't want to bring Huang home, because Kiki doesn't want Huang and Afu to be sad. In the end, the little fellow was still kind-hearted. The more she thought about it, the more uncomfortable she felt. Her eyebrows furrowed, and golden beads rolled in her eyes. Kiki is a good child, so sensible. Feng Bei held Kiki's smiling face and kissed it lovingly. Don't cry. Kiki also thought of herself. The little girl couldn't help but cry. She said tearfully, Kiki didn't have a mama when she was young. Other children have a mama. Kiki doesn't want Huang to be as sad as Kiki. Kiki didn't cry in the past because Kiki had a good father who was both a father and a mother. Kiki didn't make a fuss in the past because when she really realized this problem, Feng Bei had already filled this gap in her life. Kiki didn't express it in the past, but in fact Kiki had always understood. Feng Bei was a little shocked, and her eyes were a little red. She hugged Kiki and said with heartache, yes, don't you have a mother now? Mom has already promised your mother that she will love you well. Every time they came back, Poplar Fruit would take Kiki to pay respects to Kiki's birth mother, Wu Yu. He didn't ask Feng Bei to go with them, but Feng Bei asked to go every time. Feng Bei liked Kiki and treated Kiki as her own. She had said this to Kiki before, and she had also promised to the tombstone at the bottom of the hill. Kiki knows. Kiki held Feng Bei's soft hand and rubbed it with satisfaction. Her mood was like the autumn night sky of the southern kingdom, comfortable and bright. The next day, although there was still some reluctance, Poplar Fruit promised to bring Kiki home to see Huang during the new year, and Grandpa and Grandma also promised not to give the 3 Huang to others, so Kiki obediently went home with her father. After returning home, the first thing Yanggu did was to hide the Type 92 holster on her belt in the top compartment of the wardrobe. She used clothes that she rarely wore to cover it. He couldn't let Kiki see it, and he also couldn't let Kiki reach it. This thing was not a toy, and there was a danger of an adult holding it. Feng Bei and Lin Xingshan took Kiki to buy a small bag and beautiful clothes for kindergarten. Poplar Fruit didn't follow. He started to get busy. The main thing was that in the coming new semester, Poplar Fruit needed to give a speech, and a lot of speeches. After 2 months of intensive work, Fat Dragon and Kai Simin led the original company's employees and local staff, and worked themselves to death. Finally, in 3 provinces, thousands of poor mountainous areas, and millions of poor children were set up. Was this a lot of people? A lot. But compared to the national shortfall of nearly 500 million poor children, a few million really wasn't a lot. The country invested more than $1 billion in poverty alleviation funds and more than 100,000 government workers, but compared to the scale of a few decades ago, it was still too little. However, from this, one could see the country's determination. In the past 2 months, how many times had the remote teaching been on the news? In the past 2 months, how many television interview programs had discussed the model of remote teaching? How many media outlets had participated in the mobilization of university volunteers? Indeed, just like what Poplar Fruit and the country had discussed, the country was only using remote teaching as a transition. In the future, it would gradually transition to teachers hired by the country to teach, university volunteers to enrich the teaching content, and the children's lives during the holidays. It was a bit far-fetched, and it would take more than a year to set up this stall. Not to mention that this transition would take 10 years as a unit to gradually popularize the reform. Poplar Fruit was now the main force in mobilizing university volunteers. The speech schedule had already been arranged. In the coming semester, he needed to give 100 speeches in universities across the country. Sometimes it was even possible to give 2 speeches a day. The number of speeches, the intensity, and it exceeded Poplar Fruit's previous experience. He needed to be well prepared. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 11-17. The physical and psychological aspects were still okay, but the most important thing was to prepare the speech. Charity and remote teaching were big topics. Poplar Fruit had already written a book about it. If he were to stand up and talk, he would not be able to finish it even if he talked for a day and a night. Poplar Fruit used to give speeches at several high schools in Yangcheng. Now that he thought about it, he felt that his speeches were too general. Life, learning, ideals, charity, etc. He talked about everything, but there was no clear central idea. Now it was different. Poplar Fruit had 100 speeches. He needed to fully mobilize the enthusiasm of the students from the 100 high schools, and even the students from other high schools to participate in charity. Therefore, the task was important and difficult. Poplar Fruit had to redesign his speech. However, Poplar Fruit was not a master speaker. He had read a lot of books, but he did not have a clear idea of how to design his speech. He had to ask a professional for help. Poplar Fruit thought of Professor Mills, one of the speakers of the TED conference, whom he met on the plane 2 years ago. If Poplar Fruit was a beginner, then Professor Mills was a master speaker with a wealth of experience. It wasn't just TED. Professor Mills was famous even before TED. He had received many invitations to speak in the United States. At the TED conference, Professor Mills told his story to the point of tears and won the TED Award in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, his project did not come to fruition as he had described. Perhaps there was a cruel reality between the two. Poplar Fruit did not have Professor Mills' contact information. He was not a beauty. Why would Professor Mills give his name card to a young fan he met on the plane? However, Poplar Fruit thought of a quick and effective way to contact Professor Mills. Professor Mills was a neurology professor at Harvard University, and there was someone at Harvard who knew Poplar Fruit. It was Professor Ritchie who had invited Poplar Fruit to Harvard. Professor Ritchie didn't treat Poplar Fruit differently just because Professor Ritchie rejected Poplar Fruit. Later, Professor Ritchie and Poplar Fruit kept in touch. Although the two were in different schools, different countries, and even different time zones, they still had academic discussions through email. After writing the email to Professor Rich, Poplar Fruit came out of the study because Fong Bebe and Kiki were already back. Kiki happily hugged the pleasant goat bag and ran to her father to show off. The school bag was not big, only a little bigger than an iPad. The Poplar Fruit weighed it, and it was very light. What Kiki liked was the pink pattern on the outer layer of the school bag. The seller had purposely made 2 cute protruding corners to make the style of the cartoon character more vivid. "Uncle, this daughter of yours is hopeless." Fong Beibei deliberately sighed and laughed. "I want to pick another bag for her. SpongeBob SquarePants, Minions, and even the song she has always been singing. She doesn't even want the bag from Frozen. She only wants Pleasant Goat. A lot of kids nowadays don't choose Pleasant Goat anymore. The most popular one is Minions. And I also think Minions look good." Fong Beibei didn't care about these problems. She was just teasing Kiki. "Pleasant Goat is the best." Kiki pouted and said unhappily, "Pleasant Goat can defeat Big Wolf and protect the other lambs in the village. A lot of people like Pleasant Goat." "But you bought Beautiful Goat," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Pleasant Goat was a male character, so the pink school bag had the Beautiful Goat pattern on it. "Beautiful Goat, Kiki also likes it." Poplar Fruit was not difficult for Kiki, who knew this cartoon like the back of her hand. She was afraid that her father and mother didn't know. So she pulled Poplar Fruit's hand and let Poplar Fruit sit down. Then she held her school bag and seriously explained, "Beautiful Goat is the most beautiful, and she is very kind and cute just like Kiki." After she finished speaking, Chi-Chi even coyly assumed a shy posture. Poplar Fruit was amused by Kiki and laughed. Someone said that she was beautiful, kind, and cute. Where did this little brat's confidence come from? Seeing her father laughing like this, Kiki was not happy. She climbed onto the sofa and reached out to cover her father's mouth. She pouted and said, "Papa, don't laugh." This coquettish tone made Poplar Fruit happy. He rubbed Kiki's little face and smiled. "Okay, Kiki is right. Our Kiki is so kind and cute. And beautiful, and Pleasant Goat's bravery," Kiki added. Yes. Poplar Fruit smiled and turned to Fong Beibei and said, "It's okay. Anyway, Kiki picked it, so it can be considered as supporting the domestic cartoon. If Kiki was tired of carrying this school bag, then they could just buy another one." In the evening after dinner, Kiki had finished bathing. Fong Beibei helped her change her clothes in the bedroom and gave her some safety education. After all, this was a kindergarten, an environment full of strangers. Without the care of himself or Fong Beibei, even if there was a conscientious teacher and a strict kindergarten safety system, Poplar Fruit and the rest still wanted Kiki to learn some precautions. It was best to leave this matter to Fong Beibei, who was more patient and resourceful. However, Kiki, who had just finished bathing, was full of energy. Her big eyes looked around. Sometimes she looked at the toys on the side, and sometimes she looked at Goldie, who was waiting for her outside the door with its tongue out. She was a little absent-minded. "Kiki, come, Mommy will ask you some questions, okay?" Fong Beibei pulled Kiki's little arm and said. It was quite innovative to ask questions instead of boring lectures. Okay. Chi-Chi was still quite obedient. It was just that the way she looked left and right had already revealed her inner desire to leave and play. Poplar Fruit stood at the side and looked at it funny. Goldie crawled at his feet. Fong Beibei had already started to ask. "If there is a stranger who comes and asks you, say, 'Kiki, I have a piece of cake here. Do you want to eat it?' What will you say?" Fong Beibei, in order to act more realistic, even stretched out her hand. Kiki was absent-minded, but when she heard about the cake, her eyes immediately lit up. She giggled, nodded, and said, "Okay, Kiki wants to eat the cake." Poplar Fruit almost laughed out loud. Of course, it was a bitter laugh. "No, Kiki wants to say it, I don't want it." Fong Beibei waved her hand and said, "How can you eat the food of strangers? Isn't that right? If there is a stranger who wants to give Kiki cake to eat, what will Kiki say?" Kiki blinked doubtfully, but still obediently said, "I don't want it." "That's right." Fong Beibei nodded and then continued to ask, "Then if there is an uncle who comes and says, 'Kiki, let's go, I'll buy you ice cream. In such hot weather, ice cream is the best to eat.' What will Kiki say?" "Ice cream?" Kiki's eyes, which were drifting, immediately turned back. She even licked her lips and nodded vigorously. Okay. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Chapter 11:18. The title comes from a video, which is also the inspiration for this chapter. Everyone can watch a video of my daughter being taught by her mother not to be deceived by strangers. My daughter is really cute. It's over, it's hopeless. Kiki, this girl, will definitely be seduced by someone with cake or ice cream in the future. Poplar Fruit, as a father, felt like crying. It was as if the theme song of Fong Beibei's favorite Korean drama this year. You are my destiny. You are my very thing. You are my one love, was ringing in his ears. Unfortunately, everything in Kiki's eyes was not her father, but that damn cake and ice cream. No. Fong Beibei pinched Kiki's little nose and said, Kiki, you can't say yes. You must remember to refuse and say, I don't want. I don't want. Kiki giggled. After a while, she came back to her senses and asked curiously, why? Because it's very likely that the person who wants to buy the cake and ice cream for Kiki is a bad guy. Fong Beibei thought for a while and said, he will trick Kiki to a corner where no one will notice, and then take Kiki away. Just like Grey Wolf taking away the beautiful sheep? Kiki asked. However, looking at her expression and big eyes, why was there a little hope in her frightened look? Fong Beibei did not notice. She pretended to be Big Bad Wolf and scratched Chi-Chi while baring her fangs and brandishing her claws. She said, yeah, isn't it scary? Poplar Fruit knew that Kiki was not afraid at all. As a father, he knew best what this girl was thinking. Poplar Fruit had given her a very safe environment since she was young, and she rarely encountered danger, so Kiki was actually very naive and felt that she was living in a fairy tale world. She asked that question just now because she thought that there would be a pleasant sheep, or that she would simply be a pleasant sheep and bravely fight with Grey Wolf. Poplar Fruit coughed twice and interfered, saying, no, it's different from Grey Wolf. Kiki, do you still remember 2 years ago, when Dad drove you and Uncle Mosquito out on a trip? Kiki was almost taken away by bad guys. If Dad hadn't found out in time, Kiki might have really been taken away. Because she had inherited Poplar Fruit's genes, as Poplar Fruit himself thought. Kiki had a photographic memory that was comparable to her dad's. As long as she started to have her own thinking ability, Kiki would remember basically everything that had happened. However, that experience really frightened Kiki. People had self-protection mechanisms, and Kiki was the same. Over the past 2 years, Kiki had gradually buried this bad memory in the depths of her mind until her dad dug it out. If she was taken away by bad guys, then she would never see Dad again. He wanted to play the bad guy, so Poplar Fruit made up his mind and said, if Kiki could never see Dad again, would you be sad? Kiki gradually recalled the scene at that time, and her big eyes showed real fear. Not only was she afraid, but Kiki's mouth was pursed and her eyes were misty. She was about to cry. Okay, don't scare the child. Fong Beibei, who was playing the bad guy, didn't appreciate it. She pushed Poplar Fruit angrily and told him not to get involved. She hugged Kiki and began to comfort her. I don't want to go to kindergarten. Kiki pursed her lips and rubbed her eyes. Kiki, Dad is right. But it's not that scary. Fong Beibei said softly. Kiki just needs to remember not to eat things given by strangers, not to listen to strangers, and not to follow strangers. Then there will be teachers to protect Kiki in kindergarten. And Mom or Dad will pick you up when you go home. You won't be in danger. Kiki nodded vigorously and said, yes, Kiki will say no. Fong Beibei laughed and said, that's right, Kiki is so smart. But what if an uncle comes and says to Kiki, little friend, Uncle's leg is sprained, can you take Uncle to the hospital? What should Kiki do? Fong Beibei didn't finish and continued to ask. Poplar Fruit had discussed this problem with her, because Kiki was too kind and didn't know how to distinguish between good and bad. Sometimes, even if she wasn't cheated because of her gluttony, she might be cheated by others using her kindness and innocence. Kiki obviously hesitated for a moment, but Kiki was still smarter. She thought of what Fong Beibei had been emphasizing just now. She pursed her lips and said gloomily, no, Kiki won't take Uncle to the hospital. But what if Uncle's leg is really sprained? The little boy frowned and asked. Then Kiki should report it to the kindergarten teacher. Fong Beibei raised a finger and said, well, this is our second principle today. If a stranger asks Kiki to help do something, even if he is not a bad person, Kiki should not help him. You must tell the kindergarten teacher. Kiki suddenly understood and nodded and said, Oh, Kiki understands. I must ask the teacher to help. Yes, if he drags Kiki or else Kiki will tell the teacher. He must be a bad person. Fong Bei said. At this time, Kiki must shout for help and let the good people around to beat him. Will Dad come to save Kiki? Kiki looked at her father standing at the side and asked expectantly. Yes. If Kiki is in danger, Dad will definitely come to save Kiki. Fong Bei smiled and said, but sometimes when Dad is not by Kiki's side, then Kiki must pay attention to these possible dangers and protect herself. Chi-Chi nodded her head. She was finally listening attentively. There's more. Fong Bei said with a smile. If there are other children in the kindergarten, or their parents want to invite Kiki to play at home, what should Kiki do? Because of this question, Kiki fell into confusion again. She thought for a moment, tilted her head and looked at her mother and replied, Say no? Yes. Kiki's answer is great. Fong Bei gave Kiki a thumbs up and said with a smile, because in these invitations it may bring danger to Kiki. And if Kiki goes to play at someone else's house and your parents can't find you, won't they be worried? Kiki nodded. Yes. So Kiki has to say to the other party, No. I have to wait for my parents to come and get their permission before I can go. Fong Bei instructed. It's also possible that the other party will say, No, I've already told your parents and they know. Then Chi-Chi definitely can't agree to it. She must get her parents' approval in person. Kiki nodded vigorously and said, Kiki knows. Pleasant Goat also said that if the bad guy lied to the child and said that it was your father who asked me to pick you up, then you must not listen to him and go with him. Fong Bei clapped her hands with a smile and said, You're absolutely right. Okay. Fong Bei said. Now that I'm done with my questions, let's go over it again, okay? Kiki said happily, Okay. For example, if a stranger came over and gave Kiki a lollipop, then said, Little girl, you're so pretty. Why don't you go see the goldfish with Uncle? Fong Bei held back her laughter and glanced at Poplar Fruit, whose mouth was wide open awkwardly, and continued to ask, What should Kiki say? Okay. Kiki nodded without hesitation. Ah. Fong Bei pouted and was unhappy. She was prepared to teach Kiki again. Unexpectedly, Kiki smiled slyly. She escaped from Fong Bei's arms and burrowed into the blankets, giggling. Don't fool around. What should I say? What should I say? Fong Bei suppressed her anger and stretched her smooth arm into the blankets to tickle Kiki. No. Kiki's voice was muffled and she could not stop laughing in the blankets. I really don't know what to do with this little fellow. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Chapter 11-19. With Professor Richie's help, Poplar Fruit was able to contact Professor Mills. Professor Mills still remembered Poplar Fruit. However, he now knew that the young man he chatted with on the plane had also achieved great results. Professor Mills was still very happy to help Poplar Fruit. He taught Poplar Fruit a lot of speech tips and also recommended a few really helpful books on public speaking to Poplar Fruit. Of course, they were all in English, but this was not a problem for Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit felt that Professor Mills's biggest inspiration for him was not the tips and book recommendations, but a sentence he said to Poplar Fruit. No speaker relies on theory. If you want to speak well, there is only one way, and that is to. Only by constantly speaking and constantly sensing one's own shortcomings in a real speech environment, and constantly making up for one's shortcomings, and improving oneself before the next speech could one possibly become a successful speaker. Poplar Fruit might not have high aspirations to become a successful speaker, but Professor Mills's words made Poplar Fruit understand one thing. Now he should not rush for success. He should not deliberately make his first speech perfect. That was obviously impossible. However, he would persevere and work hard to improve himself. He would make his speeches more and more exciting and resonate with the audience. He would be able to ignite the passion of the young students for public welfare. Poplar Fruit believed that he could do it. Poplar Fruit put down this burden and made some final improvements to his speech. It was September 1st, the big day when Kiki would enter the kindergarten. This was a big event. For Poplar Fruit's family, not only did Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei prepare early, but Fong Jingji's parents also rushed over and made it very grand. Not only did Kiki dress well, but she also tried to stuff toys into her small bag. In fact, her small bag could not hold anything at all. 2 books would probably be enough to fill it. Okay. Poplar Fruit had just taken out a small doll from her bag when Kiki turned around and put a Barbie doll in. Poplar Fruit had to stop her. The teachers don't let children bring toys to play in kindergarten. Why? Chi-Chi asked as she blinked her large eyes in confusion. This was a good question. Poplar Fruit did not know the correct answer, but he did remember that there was such a rule. Therefore, he could only brace himself and make up an answer. Because there are toys in kindergarten. Children can play with kindergarten toys. Poplar Fruit explained. But if the toys there are not fun, can't Kiki play with her own toys? Kiki pouted and was not satisfied with this answer. Poplar Fruit sometimes felt that explaining to Kiki was actually a challenge to his IQ. The little girl was too smart. There were many things that she did not understand, but when she analyzed, it really made sense. This problem definitely could not be explained by the rules of the kindergarten, because Kiki would definitely not comply. Moreover, Poplar Fruit's education philosophy for Kiki was based on reason. Forcing children to follow a rule might sometimes lead to a rebellious mentality. Think about it, if all the children play with their own toys, will there be a situation where Kiki wants to play with other children, but other children only like their own toys and do not like to play with Kiki? Poplar Fruit hypothesized a scenario. Kiki was already deep in thought, so Poplar Fruit struck while the iron was hot and said, "In kindergarten, Kiki should get to know more children and become good friends with them, right? Moreover, the kindergarten teachers will organize a lot of small games for Kiki and other children to play happily together. Wouldn't that be more interesting than Kiki playing with toys by herself?" Poplar Fruit felt that Kiki's grip on the Barbie doll was not as strong as before. He smiled and gently took it in his hand, shook it, and asked, "So is it better to leave the Barbie doll at home and wait for Kiki to come back at night? Anyway, the Barbie doll won't run away at home, right?" Kiki looked at the Barbie doll reluctantly, but in the end she nodded and said, "Okay." Outside, Father Fong and Mother Fong praised in unison. "Wow, Kiki is dressed so beautifully today." Kiki thinks so too. The little girl giggled as she was kissed in the arms of her grandparents. Chi-Chi really liked her outfit today. She wore a red doe-like sweater with a cartoon deer on it, a short woolen tutu skirt, and a pair of soft and warm black leggings. Paired with a small and cute fisherman's hat and cool snow boots, she really couldn't look too good. In kindergarten, you have to listen to the teachers. Mother Fong pulled Kiki and looked at her left and right. Then she kept reminding her, "Also, don't be deceived by those little boys. Girls have to be reserved. If the boys say that they like you, Kiki has to say." Kiki rushed to say, "No. That's right." Mother Fong smiled and glanced proudly at Poplar Fruit, who was blushing with shame. Fong Beibei covered her mouth and laughed secretly. She and Poplar Fruit both knew that her mother was using this as a pretext to make a fuss. They drove Kiki to the entrance of the kindergarten. It was a Western-style villa. Of course, it was 2 floors higher than a villa. There was a garden and a beautiful little amusement park inside. There were no walls, but the fence was very high. It was very good for the safety of the children. The kindergarten teachers were lined up in 2 rows at the entrance. There were white, black, and Chinese people, regardless of their nationality. They all smiled and greeted the children as they entered. The children also responded politely. They only said "old students" here. At the entrance, there were still many children who had just entered the kindergarten hugging their parents and crying. Regardless of whether they were Chinese or foreign children, they were all children. As long as they were children, they would have a strong mentality of dependence on their parents. How could they not cry when they left their parents for the first time? Therefore, Poplar Fruit looked at Kiki, who was in the back seat being hugged by Mother Fong and Father Fong. This little girl's dependence on him was no worse than any other child's. After getting out of the car, Poplar Fruit decided to hug his daughter and ask, "Kiki, later, you'll have to leave Daddy and Mommy, and then go to kindergarten in this courtyard. Are you afraid? Daddy, are you coming back to pick Kiki up tonight? Kiki looked at her father and asked. Of course. Daddy will definitely come to pick you up, no matter how busy I am. Poplar Fruit said affectionately. He could not guarantee the future, but today was Kiki's first time going to kindergarten. How could Poplar Fruit not come to pick her up? Then Kiki won't be afraid. Kiki smiled brightly. She reached out and pressed between Poplar Fruit's eyebrows and said, Daddy, you have wrinkles here. Daddy doesn't have wrinkles. I'm worried about you, so I pinched them. Poplar Fruit nudged the little girl with his forehead. Kiki said goodbye to her grandfather, grandmother, and mother one by one. In the end, Poplar Fruit could not help but hug his daughter and kiss her little face again and again. He said, Good girl, be good and make more friends. Have fun. Daddy will make some delicious food tonight, and I'll take you home to eat, okay? Okay, let's pinky swear. Kiki happily reached out and pinky swear with her father. Yanghua explained a few more things to the kindergarten teacher. In the end, she watched Chi-Chi walk into the kindergarten with a bright smile on her face. She kept looking back and waving her hand as she walked into the kindergarten. It's time to go. Otherwise, Kiki won't be able to let go. Fong Bei pulled Poplar Fruit's hand and said, Uncle, you seem to be crying. How could that be? Poplar Fruit strongly denied. He turned his head to open the car door and said with a smile, It's just sand blowing into my eyes. What a vulgar excuse. Mother Fong curled her lips. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations greater than or equal to *, that you're tuning into the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.